Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to something a little bit different here. Welcome back to another broadcast on the CranKy Ducklings, to the TLMC 21 map submissions overview. I'm of course Showside VIP. With me, I'm joined by these amazing maps, I should say, by the map makers and of course by the people in chat and my red plushies as well. Welcome, one and all. Bienvenidos, papi, bienvenidos. This is an impromptu stream, as always. Right after we finish the podcast, bam! What did we have? We had the TLnet Map Contest 21 submissions finalized and revealed to the public. The finalists, I should say, were revealed to the public. Of course, right after we ended the stream, of course, and after we wrapped up. Like always, smudge, papi, smudge. But we're here to quickly go over, I say quickly, to go over the maps themselves, to go over my thought process, to maybe bring a little insight as to what at least I was looking for. Just for some transparency, I did say this before, of course, leading up to this, but I was one of the judges. I was one of the judges for this season's TLMC. It was my first time. It was my first time. Definitely a learning process, and definitely things that I wish I did or that I will do moving forward if I do this again. Again, there's definitely a lot to discuss when it comes to the process, when it comes to the maps, and when it comes to, you know, again, what kind of transpired in the end, as we do have our finalists. Oh boy, typical podcast, exactly, typical, papi, typical. As soon as the podcast ends, bam, new PTR patch update, or bam, something like this, a big announcement, as always. But yeah, welcome all in the chat. I see Werehogs, I see 007, Psycons as well, Bartholomew, bienvenidos. Also 007. And this is going to be a bit of a different stream. I don't know how many people are going to be too interested or will tune in, just because there's no tournament happening, there's no games between players or anything like that. So maybe a little bit less interest in something like this, but I feel like it's important nonetheless. Do you feel like it's important? We'll get into it. There's a lot to discuss. I'll try not to be too negative about certain things. There's definitely a lot to criticize and critique. We'll get into it. First things first, congratulations to our top 16 finalists here. Congratulations to our top 16 maps, as I very quickly will switch our scenes over. And oh no, we're not showing that yet. Bam, there we go. So over on TL, this was announced, the TLnet Map Contest number 21. We do have our finalists. We have our top 16 maps here. We will be going over this shortly, don't you worry, but I will give a link in the chat. I believe voting is either currently open or will soon be opening up. Let me just quickly double check. Here we announced that the Wardy TV TLMC tournament is coming up, but this time it will be slightly delayed to October 7th to 12th. I believe the voting opens after this event occurs, so looks like the Wardy event is going to be again next week, or actually just in over a week's time, unfortunately. Once that wraps up, then there's going to be votings available. We are also going to be featuring these maps ourselves in our own tournaments. Oh, sorry, hold on, can I do something here? We're also going to be hosting and showcasing these maps in our tournaments as well, and I believe most online tournaments should be following suit to be able to showcase as many of these maps as possible, so people get a better idea of what is good, what is not, what they want in the new map pool, and what to stay away from as well when it comes to being informed as to what to vote for and what to push for in the new map pool as well. So that is going to be again in over a week's time. Best of luck to Wardy and to all those working on that event. But before that, we have this. We have the judging process. Okay. So first things first, before I get ahead of myself, I definitely was, again, this is my first time kind of judging, and I put in a lot of work. A lot of time. It took me like 2 weeks-ish, to kind of get through everything, and whenever I wasn't casting, I was trying to find time to go through maps. Even while I was casting, I'll be honest, whenever we cut to a break, I would be going through maps and quickly like writing some thoughts as well. Like I was trying to squeeze it in as much as possible. Because we cast so much, I didn't really have a lot of time to dedicate to this, so whenever I could, I would go in, I would go through some maps. In total, there were, I think it was 86. There was around 80-ish maps provided here, of course, between Rush, Standard, Macro, Dynamic maps. There was a lot of maps that were introduced, that were revealed, that were showcased here, that were made, that were submitted. There we go. That were submitted for the event itself. It was a lot, Mappy. It was a lot, and because of that, I do know that it's been quite difficult to actually find judges and to find people that are willing to devote as much time and to spend as much time and spend as much energy going through all these maps and critiquing as well, and having the wherewithal to critique. I do know that it has been difficult to find judges. Again, I was just reached out to for the first time, and I was only one of only five judges here, which again is a bit of a problem. I want to say in the past there were more, but right now there's only 5 judges in total, which I do think is an issue. I do think is a bit of a shame. Before I get too ahead of myself or to get too far into this, I do want to say that if there's someone out there, whether it's a content creator, whether it's someone that's dedicated to the game in some way, shape or form, and if you think they're going to be a good fit to actually go through some of these maps and to be a judge and to kind of have some criticism that can be levied and can actually take part in this, reach out to them. I do feel like more judges are necessary here. I think this is a really important process when it comes to picking the new map pool. I do think there's a lot of value here and there's a lot of importance here, and I would hope to see more judges and more people stepping forward. Like in my mind, I can already imagine a couple of people that I think would be really good for this, but I also know that there were like other things that were happening in their lives that didn't really give them the time to actually step in and to judge. I'm thinking, for example, of like Pig. As you know, like things happened in his life recently where he wasn't quite available to do something like this. I'm thinking of Euthermal. Euthermal also was traveling a lot, was competing a lot, flying all over the place. So Euthermal, he also wouldn't have had the time to do something like this. But there are definitely people in my mind that I might even reach out and recommend to approach and to be judges for this. If there's anyone that you're thinking of, I recommend, you know, trying to reach out, trying to pose them the idea of like, hey, are you willing to do this? Because it's not just about like having the knowledge or kind of having the wherewithal to judge, but also the time, right? It's a big time sink. It is a big time sink, and it's really daunting as well. I know that it's very off-putting for a lot of people because of that, for sure. Oh, Greenert in the chat. ¿Qué tal? ¿Cómo estás? Or maybe Greenert, maybe. But I think it'd be, you know what? I think it'd be really nice because, I don't know if you can see here. Do we zoom in? Can we zoom in a little bit? Oh. Hold on. Hold on. Can we zoom? I don't know if you notice this. So the judges are left anonymous, of course. This is like the public display of what our judging was. As you can see here, we have Judge 1, we have Judge 2, Judge 3, Judge 4, Judge 5, and we have the numbers that we did rate each map here in the center. So here 4, 5, 4, 5, 3. So this is kind of like our overall rating between 1 and 5. 5, of course, being the best, 1 being the worst. And we could leave comments. And like I don't want to make this, I don't want to call people out. That's not what I'm here for. That there's a lot more to kind of get into, but like this is just for an example here. This is for the number 1 map. Number 1 map was Celestial Enclave. That was the number 1 map. Here, Judge 1. What did we leave? Pretty map with a lovely layout. Comment 2. This should be a freestyle map. Comment 3. I wonder who that was. Huh. This map allows for a pretty secure 4-base setup. However, the bases are spread out, the ramps are wider, and the linear 5th base is on the low ground. Even if the forward high ground base is taken as a 5th, there is still a run by and counterattack potential behind the base. This is the balance I'm looking for in regards to macro maps, hopefully encouraging aggression even in the late game. That's pretty insightful. Judge 4. If this is Celestial, then it seems that hell may be leaking again. Judge 5. Empty. like I put so much work into actually going through every I left like a story, like a book for every single map, by the way. And we have a lot of empty spaces. We have like 1-line comments about things that are unrelated. Yo, this actually felt kind of bad. I'm not here to name and shame the other judges by any means, by any means. Like, you know, I think it's good to have a wide variety of opinions when it comes to going through maps, but this was a little bit disappointing, just because I do think this is important. Like, I think it's important to, or to even, like, to even, not saying that they didn't have like a thought process when it came to picking maps, but like giving an idea as to the thought process as to why a map got a 5 or why a map got a 4, or like what is so good about said map, what is not so good about the map, what can be improved upon when it comes to feedback, when it comes to iteration. I think it's important to give feedback and to give a rationale as to the reasoning as to why you gave a number. Also, I don't know if you can tell, because obviously I'm Judge 3, I was a lot more strict when it comes to I did not give a single 5. I was very, I do regret that. We'll get into it later, but I was very sparing with the points that I was giving out. I was very careful about that. I didn't want to rate things too highly or too not. Like, I didn't want to be too biased either. I didn't give a single 5. I probably should have, by the way, just because of how close the actual results were. It was actually, fun fact, between 16 and 17 there was 0.03 as the difference in score. Like, that's like less than a 1%, like less than a, like, it's crazy like how slim the margins are. Like, the margins are very, very slim here, and one extra point for some of these would have swung things, and they probably would have made it into top 16. I was given a little bit of feedback after this. I reached out to Patches, and he told me, like, hey, like, even if like you think there's room for improvement on maps, you should probably pick like a top 3 and just give them 5s. And I was like, I agree. I probably should have done that, because there are maps down here that in my opinion were pretty good. And if I gave them like a 5 instead of a 4, like, maybe they make it in. Like they probably would have actually. they probably do make it into the top 16, and everything's different, right? So I do have a little bit of regret there, where I was sparing with that. And if I do this again, I will do that, where I would, you know, maybe try to cut down to like a top 3 and then give those a 5, just to try to give them the best chance to actually be a part of the map pool. Just because a lot of these other guys, they did not care. They, like, as in, they threw around a lot of 5s. There's 5s all over the place, man. It's crazy. Oh my god. Whereas, like, I think I had the wrong thought process, where in my mind I was like, a 5 is like a perfect map, and I didn't know. For me, like, I wasn't sure what a perfect map was, because I feel like for every map, even for the 4s that I was giving, there was like a thing here and there that could be changed, it could be adjusted, that could be improved upon. So I was very adverse to giving like a perfect score, but at the same time, I'm also hurting some of these maps as well by not doing that. If some of the other judges are giving out 5s more freely, right? Like, if they're a lot more willing to do that, then like I'm hurting maps that I think are quite good, right? So so that's definitely something that I'm going to change moving forward. Do you know the ranks of the other? No, I don't think it's. I don't think that matters too much. Like, it's, well, like, maybe it does, but like, I don't. Again, as I mentioned before, like, I don't want to name and shame. Like, I don't want to do that. But I do think that it's. I feel like comments should be required. For judges to be able to explain their thought process and their rationale and to give feedback as well. Like, I think, yeah. So that was just one thing that was a little bit disappointing when everything was revealed. Again, even the ones that especially for the maps that I gave 1s for, like, I felt like I had to explain myself, you know, like, I had to. Catching him. can you see the other judges notes and scores before doing yours? No. We everything that we do is separate from each other. I don't see what the other judges were doing or what their thought process was or anything like that until the very end, until everything's finalized. When everything's finalized, then like I woke up to this. I woke up to it. Ah, God. Anyways, that was just my personal experience stepping into the field of judging for the first time. But talking about the maps themselves, we can go a little bit more into detail as to the finalists here. And again, the margins were very slim. Like very easily, we could have seen a very different top 16. Again, like if I'd maybe like given like a 5 here or there, like and likewise, I was also being generous with these 2.5s. If you ever see a 2.5, that is me being like, I've given out too many 2s. I feel bad about it. I'll give him a 2.5. that was my so if you ever see a 2.5 here, really in my opinion was really a 2. But I was just being, I just wanted to be a little bit nice there. I wanted to, you know, maybe pull back a little bit and not be as harsh. And some of these 2s did actually make it into top 16, by the way, which is crazy. There are some of these maps I can't believe they made it through. That's insane. Like, I want to know why this map was a 5. There's an empty score here. Like, what? How did this happen? There's some really good maps though. That, like, again, like there are definitely some really good maps that made it through into the top 16. 100%. There are just others that are a little bit more questionable for sure. Now, I've been a little bit vague as to, you know, going into it. I'm not going to go through every single map. The list is public. Actually, I'm okay with sharing this. So if you're in the chat, I'll post it here in Twitch chat. I'll post it in the YouTube chat. Winter, maybe Winter. This is a public Google Doc, so again, it's public, so it's okay. If you wish, you can go in and you can read everything that you want. You can go through, like, again, like you can see all these final scorings, and you can see the comments that were left as well, so you can go through that yourself. I think it would take a really long time, and I don't know if it's necessary for me to go through individually every single map and go through like all the feedback that I had. So it's there if you do want it. It's all there for you, all there. It's in the Twitch chat, it's in the YouTube chat. But I did want to at least go through some examples of macro maps, of rush maps, of standard maps, and go through what at least I was looking for, and maybe contrast and compare it with what some of the thoughts were for some of the other judges, and then we'll go more into detail as to specifically the top 16 of what made it through. So first things first, macro. Okay, so this is a listing of the macro maps. We were kind of we were in sync for some of these for sure. I guess. Do I start with macro? Yeah, we'll start with what do we start with? Do we start with rush? We did have some varying opinions here as well. I think rush might be a bit of an easier place to start. Okay. Okay, so what's an example of something that I wasn't really, yeah, this map. Okay. So Mappy McMapface. The names of some of these maps. So when it comes to rush maps, personally, I was looking for maps that were rush maps, basically. I was looking for small maps, shorter rush distances, that kind of favored aggressive play. Something that I actually found really surprising about some of these rush maps is that despite the fact that they were so small, quite a lot of these, and basically almost every single 2-in-1 that I gave here in the rush map category, the rationale for that was, for the most part, we can go into more detail, was that these maps were very defensive. It did feel like for a lot of these quote-unquote rush maps, the map maker felt it necessary to, because the map is so small, to make the bases hyper defensive and hyper defendable, right? So it's like, oh, really short rush distance by ground, but you can set up on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bases really easily and turtle the hell up to compensate for how small the map is. And I really didn't like that idea. I feel like, yo, if we're gonna get a rush, we rush, Mappy, okay? If we're gonna have a map that's meant to be a little bit more designed to be aggressive and to allow for all-ins and to be in your face and to just clown on, then I want a rush map to kind of embrace that. So if there were some really, and in general, I do push back against maps that do favor hyper defensive play for sure, but I'm a little bit more lenient on that on macro maps, right? Like if there's a macro map, if there's a map that's meant to be big, meant to be large, and meant to take you into the late game, into max out armies, then I'm going to be like, okay, you know what, getting up to 4 bases easily on a macro map makes sense, right? Like that makes sense. Like there's like context that does like influence like what I push for, what I push against. So hey, like if a map is meant to be a macro map, then it makes sense to allow for an easier base setup compared to like a standard map or a rush map. So I did kind of like adjust my thought process depending on the category of map that we were kind of getting into. Show us the best and the worst. Well, here we have, God, which one do I want to go for? Yeah, Mappy McMapface. This I remember this map. Let's go into this. This is the map that I gave a 1, and the other judges were quite lenient on it, which is surprising to me here. This is the only one that I gave, by the way, in the rush map category. So we'll get into it. Let's see. Let us see. TLMC, rush. Okay, we'll get in. But yes, each judge gets their own list to submit. True. Okay. Here we go. So what did I say about the map itself? Okay. As stated by the map maker, the initial 4-base setup is fairly secure, with plenty of choke points favoring defensive play. The 5th and 6th expansions are also pretty straightforward, with the 5th base helping secure the 6th. There are no contested bases in the center, and in general the expansions don't push forward. In my opinion, this map leads to a lot of split map game states. Okay. So bam. This is the map editor, and this is the map that I was talking about. So this map it's a meme map name. It's called Mappy McMapface. Lovely. But we have our 2 small locations here right next to each other. Close rush distance by air. Again, relatively short rush distance by ground. But what I was referring to is just how there are no bases here in the center. So you expand linearly. You take your natural. You take your 3rd base. You can take this forward 4th. This forward 4th is something that I was pushing against. What I mean by that is that this expansion, what it does is that it actually gives you some positions up here to set up tanks, to set up and to protect this pathway leading behind the base. So this was a feature that happened on quite a lot of maps where they would have a forward 4th base like this. It'd have like an alcove and it would be covering the alleyway here, which means if you take this 4th base, if you secure this 4th base, this base here is safe. So basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Getting up to 5 bases is very easy on this map because of not just this feature, but also because of this narrow choke point here, these ramps and choke points here, and likewise your army should be situated here. Basically, you can just sit your army here. This area is more open, but this is where your army should be, and it's going to set up your own 5-base setup. But not just because of that. If you recall, I did speak about how there were no bases here in the center. This map is reminiscent to Persephone. If you know Persephone in the current map pool, what makes Persephone different from this map? The goal base. Remember, on Persephone, here on the right hand side, there are all those speed zones, and there's a goal base here on the right hand side. And typically there's a lot of contention, there's a lot of engagements and fighting, and there's lots surrounding that goal base because it's in the middle, because there's at least one base in the middle. This doesn't even have that, so it disincentivizes aggression. It means that the map is going to be cut in half pretty easily, where you have your one half and then you have your other half, right? Like, it's very distinctly cut in half, and it does kind of foster that kind of like, you stay on your half, I stay on my half. We maxed out, we cut the map in half, we set up turrets and sensor towers and everything. Like, it's something that I'm not looking for here in something like a rush map, or in just a map in general. So I would say I was maybe a little bit harsh on this one, but at the same time, like, I would not want to see I would not want to see a map like this in the map pool, because again, like at least Persephone has like areas where bases are a little bit more exposed, has more like low ground, and you do still expand a little bit more towards your opponent as well. Like here, like there's more of a delineation from one half of the map to the other. So that's like an example of something that I was kind of looking against, especially for a rush map as well. Going through some of the other comments here, let's have a look. What did the others say on this map? Judge 2. This layout looks familiar. Okay. Meanwhile, Judge 1. The layout is pretty solid and familiar. It has a healthy amount of low ground, high ground, contrast, and attack paths. I disagree. I don't know if there's a... I would disagree with the amount of attack paths available here. As I just mentioned, right, like, because you're not expanding towards your opponent, because you're not expanding aggressively, then there's less reason to be active on the map and less reason to be caught out as well, right? Like, the map layout here disincentivizes aggressive play. So I would strongly disagree with how this was phrased from Judge 1. Judge 4 didn't have any comments, and Judge 5 didn't have any comments either. So yeah, I'm a little bit... This got a 4. That's crazy. That's crazy. It's crazy. But that's like an example of maybe like a big disagreement between myself and maybe the other judges, as they did rate this map a little bit more favorably, for example. What was the map that we were all fond of? Here. 10,000 feet. Okay. Let's have a look. 10,000 feet. The bases are very spread out. However, the Zerg debris should allow for a more secure early game. Interesting use of the feature opening up the map over time. Okay, 10,000 feet. I think this is one of the maps that I went over on stream, because I did some of the judging on stream. I recall. Yeah, okay, 10,000 feet. I remember having a really hard time judging this map, actually. I do recall, I was on the fence about a 3 or a 4. In the end, I did give it a 4. But there's a lot more already. There's just a lot more going on. Compared to, like, the other map was also, it also felt a little bit less inspired, right? There was no like destructible debris or healing pads or speed zones or high yield bases or low yield bases or anything like that. Here you are actually pushing towards your opponents. Here we do have a triangular third base, which is walled off by mineral patches. It is a little bit safer, but if you remember my comment, I spoke about the interesting idea when it comes to the tumors. Initially, your 3-base setup here is actually pretty secure. Once you mine out these patches, you can set up in your 3 bases, but this will open up over time, right? So there is going to be a second attack path coming into the third base at around the 8-minute mark, unless it gets destroyed faster than that. And it's also, I believe, high ground. Yeah, it's also like a ramp leading up into the high ground as well. So suddenly your 3-base setup becomes less secure. Likewise, you're expanding forward towards your opponent. You can take the center base, which is more exposed here to tank harass, to harassment in general from the other side. Likewise, you can expand here as well, but you are spreading yourself more thin. There's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, potentially 5 different angles of attack on 4 bases. So there's a lot of angles. You can be very aggressive here. And again, you might be thinking, is it too difficult to set up on 4, 5, 6 bases here? Yes, but it's a rush map. Like, Mappy, send it. Like, sure, let's go. And again, as I mentioned, because of these tumors, this does impact the rush distance across the map, just at least in the early game. So in my opinion, I do think that you can actually secure yourself pretty easily on 3 bases here. Getting a 4th base is going to be a little bit more difficult, specifically after these tumors get knocked down, right? After the tumors get knocked down, it is going to be more difficult to defend. Likewise, there's no ramp coming into the natural. There's likewise no ramp coming in towards a 4th base. This area here, you can come in from behind to surround, to flank the army, especially once these tumors get knocked down. There is flanking surround potential as well, as you have to push down into the low ground to actually engage into the 3rd base as the aggressing player. There's like a lot more going on here, and this is something that I lean towards a little bit more favorably. I was on the fence about giving this anything higher, and even on the fence about giving it a 4th base, just because I do find it a little bit difficult to judge how strong certain all-ins can be. as they move out across the map. I do find it difficult to determine whether it's too strong, whether it's too weak. Like, a map like this is meant to be favoring some more aggressive play. Is it too favored? Is it not? That's something that I did have a bit of a hard time kind of distinguishing and figuring out myself when it comes to some of these maps. But yeah, like, in general, this map has a lot more going on, is a lot more interesting, and I believe this map did make it through, right? I believe this map, yeah, this map I think was the highest rated, yeah, it was the highest rated rush map, actually. So let's see what the rationale was for the other guys. I love this layout, from its opening and double entrances to the natural, to the way it expands towards the sides. It was from Judge 3, but Judge 3 gave it a 3. Interesting. Sorry, Judge 1 gave it a 3. Gave it one of the lowest ratings. Judge 2, or I guess I should say average rating. Judge 2, it's hard to design around backwards forward bases. This map does a pretty good job at that, as you're forced not to take it early on. True. He actually gave it higher than I did with 4.2. There was, of course, my comment. There was Judge 4, which almost gave it a perfect 5. Jesus. But no comment. And Judge 5, 3.7 with no comment as well. Which again is like, I would love to know why they rated it so highly or why they rated it so poorly. I think stuff like that is important, not just for us, but I feel like it's important for the map maker itself, right? Themselves, right? Like, for the people that do make maps, I feel like they want feedback. They want to know why, and so then ideally they can improve for the next TLMC, right? For ideally they can iterate, they can adjust moving forward and take on some of that feedback, maybe ignore some, maybe take on some, right? Like, I feel like there's, like, it benefits everyone involved by giving something a little bit more in depth, for example. What's another map where we had a big disagreement on? That was this one. This was Cradle of Eden. Oh, do I remember this map? Cradle of Eden. I gave it a 2. Gave it a 2. It got a 5 from one of the judges. Got a 4. Got another 4. What did I give here? The initial 4-base setup is very secure, which is an odd choice for a rush map. True. This dissuades from aggressive all-ins and favors defensive play early on. The rush distance is short, but the terrain in the center makes it difficult for Zerg armies to engage a pushing army. The tank spots leading across and even up the ramp are brutal. For rush maps, I'm hoping to find at least vulnerable/exposed 4th bases. Okay, this is for Cradle of Eden. Did Cradle of Eden make it through? No shot. Okay, didn't make it through into top 16. Okay. Cradle of Eden. Jesus. Oh, I remember this. Oh God. Wait, what? Did I not mention it in my comments? Hold on, let's talk about this. Oh wait, no, sorry, that was a comment for a rusty actor. Okay, Cradle of Eden, this is different. Yeah. Cradle of Eden, this is a map where I gave it a 3. Jesus. Okay, so my apologies, I opened up the wrong map. But Cradle of Eden, I appreciate the unique design. Despite not being able to expand towards your opponent and embrace the shorter rush distance, the map doesn't go the opposite direction and make it too defensive. True. Maybe I should have given this a 4. The ramps are wide and the map allows for relatively unhindered rotations, having a way to punish players attempting to exploit the pocket base. Reaper scouting will be difficult. Oh, that's why. Yeah. Reaper scouting is going to be difficult as there is no cliff directly into the main base and only one cliff facing the natural, which is a concern, especially on a map with a short rush distance. However, the more defendable 2-base setup may offset this. So I gave this an average 3 scoreline. Again, as you saw here, one of the biggest concerns that I had was no Reaper cliff into the main base here towards the left-hand side. Here as well, there's only one Reaper cliff coming into the natural. And of course the main ramp, and as I mentioned in my comments, specifically because this map is a rush map, taking away scouting options and taking away scouting opportunities does feel a little bit brutal here. I didn't rate it lower than that because the reality is that map makers, they can just change it, right? Like in between, when it comes to if they do make it further in the TLMC, they do have the option to amend their maps, to change their maps. And if they do add like a Reaper Cliff here, or even like a second Reaper Cliff here, if there's like even 2 cliff faces into the natural, or just 1 directly into the main, like if they just amend this in one way, shape, or form, like this would probably change this map from a 3 into a 4, to be honest. But yeah, interesting. For those who are curious, oh sorry, I just realized I wasn't showing. There we go. My bad. But here there's no Reaper Cliff into the main base. Here there's only 1 Reaper Cliff into the natural. I was suggesting to add 1 here, to like either add a second Reaper Cliff here into the natural base, or add a Reaper Cliff here into the main, to make scouting a little bit more available here to Terran players. But as I was mentioning, again, like you're explaining towards your opponent, yes, you can destroy some of these towers, but it's pretty open here in between the bases. A bit of a more entrance, wider entrance here, wider entrance here. Like in general, this is a little bit more open. I was talking about how, like, yes, you can take this pocket high yield expansion, but there's an area here that can be abused and that can be taken advantage of as well, to cut off your opponent from that expansion as well. So like there's like counterplay options here. So yeah, in general, I rated this, I mean, I gave it an average score line. Again, I do feel like it could be a 4 as well if we had like made some changes here. But this was Cradle of Eden. But I wanted to look at the maps where we had a disparity. I think it was Rusty Anchor. That's it. Let's have a look at Rusty Anchor. Okay. All right, what did they say for Cradle of Eden? True. No comment from Judge 4, no comment from Judge 5, no comment from Judge 2, Judge 1. Pretty cool layout, reminds me of Tropical Sacrifice with similar opening setup, but on this one, it'll be played more aggressively. They also gave it a 3. Here, Rusty Anchor. Okay. The initial 4-base setup is very secure, which is an odd choice. It dissuades from aggressive all-ins and favors defensive play early on. The rush distance is short, but the terrain in the center makes it difficult for Zerg to engage a pushing army. Tank spots leading across and even up the ramp are brutal for rush maps. I'm hoping to find at least vulnerable 4 bases. Okay, let's have a look. Oh god, yeah. Oh god, I think this is one of the maps where I went through on stream actually. So you have your main base here. There's Reaper Cliff, of course, getting into the main. You have your natural base on the right-hand side. You could argue is this a little bit vulnerable to Blinkstalker aggression? A little bit. We have seen it be a little bit more egregious than this, to be fair. But here you have your triangular 3rd base, which does have a narrow entrance coming into said expansion. We do have a second path here towards the left-hand side. Here on the right-hand side, likewise, you have a more narrow entrance. You do have potentially another attack path here, but I would say that it's relatively easy to secure yourself on your 4 bases, just because, again, especially with the more narrow ramps here, that is going to be a bit of an issue. It's all on the high ground. There's no exposed base. Typically, the 4th base would be on the low ground instead, with multiple angles of attack. Here, it's only just the one narrow entrance here on the right-hand side. Here, there is a second entrance as well, but it's all on the high ground. So this is something that I'm hoping for the 4th base to be a little bit more exposed, but something that's more brutal than that is the area in between the bases here in the center of the map. Here, because of the terrain, because of the rocks, because of the shrubbery, pushes here are going to be very, very difficult to engage. So my concern was when you set up on 4 bases, when you push across the map, it's going to be difficult to stop. And because the rush distance by ground is so short, I'm referring to like either a Protoss or a Terran player building up on 4 bases, pushing across the map. It doesn't really allow for many ways to engage an army like that here, specifically in that center. The difference between this map and the map that I rated more highly, for example, were, imagine these rocks, but being destructible tumors. Over time, the map opens up. And if you remember, even the 3rd base was more exposed because it also had, if you remember, the 3rd base was on the low ground, right? On the previous map that we rated highly. The 3rd base was on the low ground. There was a potential other entrance, which was sealed off initially, which opened up as well, right? There was a little bit more angles, a little bit more ways to like be aggressive and to get into some of these bases. How did we speak on this? Rusty Anchor. Jesus! Judge 2 gave it a 5. That max score. This map reminds me a bit of Oxide, but the triangular 3rd base is on the high ground here. I mean, that was one of the reasons why I placed it a little bit lower, was the high ground third and high ground fourth. So here there was, and again, no comments from from the other judges, unfortunately. When it comes to why they did kind of go for like, I would like to know what made this a 5 out of 5. That's crazy. It's crazy. Here. Are we missing something here? Sorry. For Coralscape, there was a comment here. This map has several layout issues. These are, and then there's nothing. There's just this. Is that a meme? Is that a meme? I don't know. They're not quite there, unfortunately. Feels bad, man. The editor sound effects are a little bit loud. Yeah, I'm not too certain how to adjust that, unfortunately. But I do, they are loud. The edit book's bigger. Maybe a spreadsheet issue. Okay. No, we got it. This map has an opening layout similar to Eternal. This is what I want out of all of it. Gib. This is what I want, Mappy. This map has an opening layout similar to Eternal Empire with only one viable third base choice, which isn't inherently a bad thing. Lack of flanking paths. Oh, this is for core. This is not even for the map that we're looking at. Hold on. Rusty Anchor. Has a pretty defensive setup, which will be hard to push and bust into. I'm unsure if the large rocks in the middle of the map are necessary, as they delay the rush distance, while the map has a pretty defensive setup with early bases being high ground, where rocks cover the ramps and create choke points. Yes, this I would agree with this statement. This is why I did rate it as low as I did. The map doesn't have many wide areas for larger sums of units to collapse onto an army or base easily, which is somewhat problematic for closing out games in a single push, not necessarily a bad thing. I would disagree with this. Like, I would agree with the first part here. Map doesn't have that many wide areas for larger sums of units to collapse into an enemy army or base easily. That is true, which is problematic for closing out games in a singular push. Well, I guess he's agreeing, saying that like games can end with one push. True. Siege tank can strike one natural gas geyser at the third base, which isn't too problematic. Overall, a pretty good. What? Why is it a good map? We agreed on the cons. Where were the pros? Gave this a 4. Ah. Okay. Never mind. What's another example of a map that we can go into? Have we looked at Coralscape? Have a look at Coralscape. The text is cut on stream. Yeah, I can't do anything about that. I can try. But yes, this setup is intentionally going to be scuffed. Okay. Here we have a Coralscape. Oh, I remember this. Do you remember what I said earlier about the forward fourth base protecting the fifth? This has the same kind of setup here, where you have your main base, you have your natural, you have your third. This also reminds me a little bit of like, say, Abyssal Reef, where you have this kind of high ground area leading into your third base. There's a very narrow choke point here coming into your 3 base setup, which can very easily be walled off, so your 3 bases here can be very easily secured. Then you expand here, then your army should be positioned here at the forward 4th base, right? If your army is positioned here at the forward 4th, and if you have this fully walled off, then your army positioning protects your 4th, your 3rd, and your 5th base as well, because there is an area here where you can set up siege positions or set up vision, I should say, to be able to rotate and to react and to protect this area here on the low ground. So you can protect this pathway in towards these bases. Not just that, but because your army is going to be here anyway, if you can contest this area, then you can easily take this expansion as well. So you can get up to 3, 4, 5, 6 bases with relative ease, with what's meant to be a rush map. Like, what? So again, this kind of dissuades aggressive play. This makes it easier to set up to 6 bases. And when it comes to pushing across the map, similar to the previous map, here it's not as egregious, but likewise, there's a lot of high ground here, so pushing through here, through the center, the only ways to surround an army that's pushing through here would have to be to go down to the low ground, then up here. But because of the terrain, because of this area, because of these terrain obstacles, you can set up and you can actually punish attempted surrounds. Like, the terrains also help you to stop getting surrounded or to not allow yourself to be flanked as easily. Like, pushes here in general do seem quite strong, and it's easy to set up on 6 bases. So this is the kind of thing that I was like looking against when it comes to these smaller maps, these rush maps. What's said about this? This was for Coralscape. Judge 1. This map has several layout issues. These are: 1. This map has no being layout similar to a Total Empire with only one viable third base choice, which isn't inherently a bad thing. That is true, there is only one viable third base. There is a lack of flanking paths, and a lot of it has to do with the forward high ground base in front of the third. I agree. If you remember, this is a feature that is relatively prominent that I do typically push against, is that forward 4th base protecting the 3rd and protecting the 5th expansion. Oh, we're locked in for this one. This base blocks the area from becoming a viable path. It does. On top of lack of flanking options, nearly all bases have only single attack paths as well. If a player was to keep his base at the ramp in front of the high ground base, he would defend all the bases around by default. Yes. So I will say, thankfully, whoever Judge 1 is, we were kind of on the same wavelength as to the rationale as to why this map would be a bad thing, would be a negative thing, right? All that's left to worry about is potential drop into the natural sus main. This isn't quite healthy. Distance between the 3rd and low ground 4th is quite big. It is really hard to take and defend on bases with high yield gases. Paths could be a bit wider. Tanks can hit the natural mineral node from low ground, and that is an easy fix. Even though the map maker wanted to make it into a rush map, this map will play out as a campy map due to the lack of way. Yeah, see, so we're actually like we're synced up for our rationale for Coralscape. I don't understand why we're not synced up for the other defensive maps though. Right? I mean, I guess for the most part we are. Judge 1 gave a lot of 1s where I gave like a lot of 2s. But again, that was not the case for Rusty Anchor, which I would argue is very similar, which is how defensive it can be. So I think Rusty Anchor was kind of like the big differentiating factor. And once again, for Coralscape, there was no comment from the other judges, from Judge 4, Judge 5, Judge 3. Sorry, Judge 2. No comments there, unfortunately. Alright. Let's move on from the rush maps. Let's move on to the let's move on to the macro maps, the other side of things. When it comes to the map, it looks like for the most part we were kind of in agreement. Let's have a look at the map that we all agreed on here. Celestial Enclave. Okay. Celestial Enclave. So for these macro maps, I was being less harsh on maps that allowed you to set up quite easily on 4 bases, specifically 4 bases. I was still hoping and looking for maps where you don't want to turtle up to 5, 6, 7 bases. Like, that's still something that I would say is not healthy for the game. So I was looking for maps that allow you to expand, but there's also like counterplay options as well. Yeah, Celestial Enclave. Okay, let's go. So what were my comments on this map? I'll leave you guys here. Celestial Enclave. So my comments. This map allows for a pretty secure 4-base setup. However, the bases are spread out. The ramps are wider and the linear 5th base is on the low ground. Even if the forward high ground base is taken as a 5th, there's still run by and counterattack potential behind the base. This is the balance I'm looking for in regards to macro maps, hopefully encouraging aggression even in the late game. Okay, let's get into it. So as I did mention, here on 4 bases, it's pretty easy, it's pretty simple, but we can be more lenient on these macro maps. So here we have our main base, we do have a pocket natural, but we do see here less mineral patches, likewise only 1 gas geyser. So it's a pocket base, but a little bit less valuable. There's a mineral wall here where you don't mine through it, but workers can move past it. So a worker can safely go through this. Lings and marines that cannot actually traverse through this terrain, and you can take this triangular 3rd base, or you can just take your 3rd base here on the right hand side, or again you should take the pocket as a 3rd or 4th base depending on how you want to set up. Likewise here, very defendable at the right hand side. We have a ramp coming up into it, so again pretty straightforward. Here you have that high ground advantage. You can knock down this debris and set up on your 4 bases. This is pretty straightforward, like a pretty straightforward setup here for 4 bases, pretty secure. Remember, longer rush distance by ground, but where things got interesting and why I rated it so highly was the 5th base. So on the previous map that we rated harshly, and on some of the other maps that we already pointed out, they had a problem where they had this forward base that was protecting this area here coming down into the 5th base. That was a bit of an issue, and also the distance as well. Here you can see the area between, I say the 4th base, sorry, I should say this is the 5th base. The area in between this 5th base and this 4th base is quite long, is quite large. You can harass and try to abuse from here from the low ground. Likewise, you can come in from behind as well. But despite all of that, the area here that you can make use of to set up is actually quite limited, and this path is very wide. You can see here that the path is actually very wide here, so even if you do set up here at this forward base, it only covers maybe half, right? Maybe half of the terrain actually leading over towards the other side. So that means that even if your army is situated here, even if you have tanks, even if you have a siege set up, you can actually, this base is still accessible, right? This 5th base is still accessible despite that. It's still relatively defended because your army's in the area anyway, but there are still ways to harass, and your army has to rotate down or rotate up, and there are other angles here where you can try to punish this expansion if your opponent moves over to defend as well. So this is a much more kind of exposed, a much more exposed 5 base setup, 5 and 6 base setup here. And this is what, you know, why I rated it so highly, and why all of us rated it highly. This did make it into the top 16, just because, sure, like, you have this base set up. Likewise, when it comes to pushing across the map as well, it is more open. We spoke earlier how some of the previous maps, when it came to the rush maps of all things, had like a bunch of terrain, had a bunch of, imagine like this tall grass here, but here in the center, some doodads here as well, some walls, which make it difficult to engage with an army. Here it's a little more open, where if an army is going to be pushing say towards this base as well, there are angles here of attack to surround, to engage. It's a lot more open, but not too open as well. There's still some safe locations with the high ground. In general, we all did rate this map much higher here because of that. Again, as I mentioned, like, this is kind of more of the balance of what I'm looking for a macro map. Is sure, you can have a secure 4 base setup, but more than that, 5th and 6th base, that's where you should be punished a little bit more as well. At least that was the hope that I had. And it looks like maybe the other judges were in agreement there. Let's have a look. Okay, this is Judge 1. Pretty map with the lovely layouts. Nice worker only path with the pocket up base. I'll voice out a few concerns. One, rocks at the secondary natural entrance. These are probably better off being mineral nodes blocking it instead. Mineral loads will make it much more secure. I don't think that is quite necessary. Basically, they're saying, basically, Judge 1 is saying that that these maybe should be minerals. If they were minerals, basically, it would be more difficult to try to rush and try to engage here because you'd have to pull workers to actually slowly mine through these minerals ahead of time. It also means that there's a higher chance that if you have some units on the other side, to kill the workers to protect the mineral wall as well. So it would make it, like, again, more defensive, more easier to defend, and easier to open up to expand as well. I don't, especially because of the longer rush distance by ground, I don't think that's quite necessary. But that was a concern that they voiced. What else did they say? If Terran chooses to attack and sit tanks behind these rocks or minerals, it will create pressure inside of the player's natural base. Regicide has a similar issue, but that was at the player's third expansion. If those were minerals, players can easily mine them out with a single worker to open up the path, but since these are rocks, the players have to commit 2 units to destroy it. Units which would be better off being elsewhere on the map. If this was a mineral, it would potentially be mined out faster, then the rocks would be destroyed, making the base behind them a potential expansion one over the low ground. Making the base behind them a potential expansion over the one on the low ground. I don't think they would take this low ground expansion. No shot. Basically, Judge 1's comments were in regards to, because these rocks being here, a player maybe being incentivized to expand on the low ground, but it will be so difficult to take this base. Just because of the attack angle here, the high ground, that'd be crazy. It'd be insane. Are there Moopies here? No, no Moopies. Yeah, I don't know if I would agree with that, because they were talking about setting up tanks behind this. What are they gonna hit? Right? Like, what are they hitting? I guess the idea is that they set up these tanks and then they can break down the rocks and then they can push. But I would say this is fine just because this isn't threatening the bases themselves. Like, this base is far enough away where your mining is not going to be disrupted. Like, likewise with your pocket base, likewise with your main base, like, you're going to be safely on 3 bases anyway. Yes, they can push through this, and they can try to push in between your bases, but I would say there's enough room here to work with, and also potential surround as well. Like, you can set up for a surround, you can go for the other side, you can catch reinforcements and come in from behind as well. Like, this ramp is wide enough where these tanks, like, depending on the position, you can see they cover part of it, sure, especially on the top side here, but I would say, like, this isn't too much of an issue in my mind. But I mean, it was raised as a concern. Maybe there is a concern there. Too surprised that the huge ramp that is in between 2 low ground bases isn't blocked with diagonal rocks. Example of such a setup previously done was Ephemeron. Wearing part could be PvZ, where Zerg can set up from the high ground to low ground from 2 different angles very easily. High ground that's in between 2 low ground bases isn't blocked. Oh, referring to this for rotations. I don't think that players are going to be expanding on the low ground. Right? That'd be crazy. I don't think it's necessary. I think, yeah. I think you want to still be expanding here as your 4th base. Like, as Protoss, you want to take this as your 4th, and then this still as your 5th. Maybe you take the low ground base as a 5th base. Maybe. But yeah, interesting comments. I also said this should be a freestyle map, and no comments here. Okay, interesting. Let's have a look at a map that we maybe had some more disagreement on. Let's have a look here. Yo, Winter Madness made it through. We might save that for a little bit later. Let's see. Yo, Castle Quest didn't make it through. I'm shocked. I'm so shocked that Castle Quest did not make it through. Why'd they give it a 2? Not many attack paths or flanking options on this map, giving army a bit forward will guard multiple bases easily. But there weren't that many bases to guard. No shot. Alright, we'll get into Winter Madness. We'll get into it. I believe Winter Madness did make it through into the top 16. Oh god, I remember getting some players in a call specifically for this map, and they were not there's a reason why I gave this map a 2. Jesus, no shot. Okay, so I'm not even gonna read my call. So the problem that I had with Winter Madness, which is, I mean, you've already heard the I'm gonna be echoing the same sentiment. So you have a really straightforward 3-base setup. You have your natural, you have your 3rd base here, and you have your 4th base here on the right-hand side. On 4 bases, there are 3 different attack paths, but the attack paths are very narrow. They're very narrow here, they're very narrow here, and the issue with this map, as you have a secure 4-base setup, which is fine, is the 5th expansion. So if you remember, we spoke about how I didn't like the idea of the 5th base being able to protect a 6th and 7th expansion. Here, you have the high ground 5th base. The 5th base is on the high ground. The 5th base is a high yield expansion as well. And because it's on the high ground, it has the high ground advantage. Not just that, there are rocks here on one of the ramps, which makes it very narrow. So pushing up this ramp or up this ramp would be very difficult. Being able to situate yourself here on the high ground does secure yourself on 5 bases. It does help protect this expansion. There are ways here to harass on the left hand side as a flank, but as I mentioned before, like I would say flanking options are quite limited here. My biggest concern for this map was that once you take this high yield base, this space behind it is free. You can take this expansion and you can take this northern base as well and centralize your army here, right? Centralize it here essentially to be able to rotate between your 5th base, your 6th base, your 5th base, and the 4th base as well. Whereas this base is perfectly safe, and there are just so many choke points. There's so much high ground. There's so many choke points here. Pushing up into any of these bases is going to be very difficult for any aggressing player. Like this is like a turtle map, 100%. Not just that, but also because of some of the terrain here and because of some of the high ground, pushing into bases is going to be easier when it comes to when you eventually move out. Like trying to engage, trying to surround, you have rocks here towards the left, you have rocks here in the center, you have more I guess terrain disrupting flow, you have tall grass here, so pushes through the center I feel like are going to be quite powerful once an army maxes out. So this is, yeah, this, in my mind, like, this was like a clear, like, not what we're looking for. So I'm a little bit shocked that this made it through. Let's see what we said about it. Let's see. The map is large, but littered with choke points. The 5th base, High Yield Gas, is a high ground base with narrow entrances and ramps leading into it, which allows for a safe 6th and 7th expansion once secure. In my opinion, the map layout features too many safe expansions without many ways to punish. Likewise, due to the choke point and tank spots leading to the opposing 3rd, 8 Raxes and main tank pushes will be very difficult to defend. So I gave it a 2. Judge 2 didn't leave any comments. Judge 4 said, "This is why we can't judge on decorations." Judge 5 didn't say anything. Judge 1. What was said here? Amazing looking map. Only one viable 3rd base option, but it's quite close. Tanks can hit the natural base on low ground. Ice rocks that are on the ramp should probably be on the other side of the ramp. I guess the only worrying part is that there is a straight line from the ramp in front of the natural to the opposing third base. Usually maps that have huge diagonal rocks placed on the ramp leading up to the high ground. Examples: Ephemeron and Abyssal Reef. So at least Judge 1 is touching on what I mentioned, how there's a straight line leading straight towards the opposing third base, which makes it easier to push, which it makes it easier to be aggressive, referring to tank pushes, referring to ARAX, is referring to just aggression there in general, referring to whenever you're playing against a player that isn't turtling up, of course, which applies to Zerg players. But they didn't touch on how many choke points, how many ramps there are, just how defendable it is. Like again, in my mind, like, yeah, this is a map that you can like play mech on, that you can turtle up and play Sky Toss on as well. Like this, I feel like this map would favor that kind of play quite heavily, actually. Which in my mind, like, isn't a good thing. Like like the reason why I rated the previous map so highly is because you have options to push into bases, you have options to be aggressive. Here, like, a lot of those options have been taken away, especially with the fifth base being a high yield gas as well. Like, Jesus, like, this is a secure base and you get like benefited for it as well. What I mean by that, maybe this is something that I should have mentioned, there are instances where you can have like a really safe like 4 and 5 base setup, but you want to punish it in a different way. If you can't punish it by being aggressive and by giving like flanking and harassing options, another way to punish this would be, imagine if this was a standard base, and imagine if, let's have a look here, if this low ground expansion that's exposed, if this had high yield gases instead. And what does that mean? What does that do? One, because it's so open, because it's so exposed, a turtling player, like a meching player or a turtling player that's going into Skytoss, won't take the space because it's so open and so unsafe. So they're going to be forfeiting and giving up potential high yield gases. So as the player who has map control, who's trying to punish a turtling player, then you can gain the benefit of having high yield gases, and that's what you get to try to offset how turtle heavy your opponent's being. Some of the other maps do have that feature, and that's what I would want to see here, right? Is you remove this you move this high yield base and you add it here instead, as an example. Or even like some of the corner bases, which would eventually be taken by the turtling player, but a little bit later on, which could be taken earlier by the player that has map control, whether it's high yield gases or whether it's gold mineral lines as well. So that's kind of what that's another way to offset how turtle heavy a player can be, how defensive a map can be as well, is to just give some kind of advantage to the player that isn't turtling, give them some incentive, give them something to help boost them to try to break someone that's just being hyper defensive, just because that's a playstyle that we want to try to disincentivize something that we want to take away from. But that isn't here, which is crazy. Yo, also shout out to Patches in the chat. God, este Patches. Aye. Just been going through some of the maps here. F for Castle Quest. True. Feels Castle Quest, man. As for me, if a judge doesn't leave a reason, it should be discounted, as there's no explanation behind the notes. Yeah, for my personal opinion, I do think that it should be required to leave a note in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't have to be like the most like eloquently like written response and feedback, but I do think there should be like some rationale as to why you rate something highly or why you don't rate something highly. I agree, like in the sense that I feel like that should be it should be almost mandatory to have something like that. It's marriage. But thank you so much. Solen's Vibe. Gracias, papi, gracias. Ga. I heard Patches bribed you to rate his maps high. Going into the judging process, I did not know who any of the maps belonged to, except for Avex's map. But that's only because it was already being played in RSL, right? RSL, they were playing on Botanical and Cenotaph. That's it. They were playing on Cenotaph and Botanical. That's the only map that I knew ahead of time who made it. Outside of that, I had no idea. Like even for Talisman, even though I know Talisman was in the map pool already, I did not remember who made that map. So I was judging it blindly. No bias when it comes to, like, you know, having more favoritism towards certain map makers. Otherwise, like, you know, I appreciate Avix quite a bit. I probably would have rated his maps. I might have been a little bit more lenient on his maps, or even like Character, for example. But nah, went in blind, except for Cenotaph. Justice for Cenotaph. I think I gave Cenotaph a 2 as well. True. Despite the bias. 5 out of 5. It's a patches map, so probably a 5. Copium. Also, Talisman had only been in 1 map contest before, not multiple. There you go. Did make some minor edits. Very minor stuff like bigger rocket bleeding through. Okay. But yeah, I'm a little bit shocked. that Winter Madness made it through, despite like what the map entails. Yeah, I have some regrets. I should have given it a 1. I should. Hi, Papi. All right, what else do we have? Oh, so for those that are just now tuning in, I hope you had a great stream. Hope you had a great ladder session as well. Gracias. If you want to look at the judges' comments yourself, you can do so via the Google link in the chat, the Google spreadsheet link. There you can find all the comments, the overall scores that we gave, and the comments that we left as well. So it's all there, so you can have a look yourselves. Some maps got robbed. Yeah. Smurge. But I think that was maybe the biggest disagreement we had was Winter Madness from macro maps. And of course Castle Quest. Like how did Castle Quest not make it through, baby? Ay. Smurge. Feels Castle Quest, man. Throne of Dunes. But yeah, so I've already kind of gone through at least my thought process for some rush maps, for some macro maps. I guess now would be a good opportunity to just go through the top 16. Yeah, why not? We'll go through the top 16. And we'll see what made it through. Celestial Enclave, we already spoke about, got the highest votes out of any map here. I probably would have given this a 5, to be honest. Like, looking back on it, I probably would have given it a 5 as well, unironically. Celestial Enclave looks really good. So shout out to Patches. I believe that is one of Patches' maps. Came in first place with a tied score with Old Republic. Este Patches. Castle Quest, I think the terrain in the middle was not good. It was too open. Maybe, but it was better than some of the other maps that these guys rated highly. Aye. So there's some questionable 4s and 5s up in here from some of these judges. Not gonna lie, they don't make any sense. But so we already went over Celestial Enclave. Up next, let's have a look at the Old Republic. Okay. I believe this was another macro map. Yeah. We'll go over the Old Republic. Man. It's okay. The Old Republic. So this is another one of these larger macro maps. Oh my god. Which is a lot wider, longer distance between the bases, more attack paths as well. There's a lot to get into. Let's get into our comments though. Alright, what did we say? I appreciate that the 5th base is more difficult to take. If a player was to decide to be hyper defensive, you can offset this by taking high yield gas base. God, now I'm smurging because this is like a good example of what a macro map could be as opposed to what we just saw with Winter Madness. If a player was to decide to be hyper defensive, you can offset this by taking the high yield gas bases. I can see a lot of games going to the late game, but there are aggressive opportunities to pressure and harass bases on both sides. Okay, let's get into it. So again, when it comes to the initial 3 and 4 base setup, it's pretty straightforward here. We do have a narrow choke point coming in between the natural base and the third, which does make it easier to set up and easier to defend. You have a bit of a wider ramp here at the third base, which does make it more accessible. This is more so than some of the other maps we've seen so far. The distance between the third base and the fourth base is a little bit longer. This will impact army rotations, defensive army rotations specifically, when it comes to rotating back and forth between your natural, your third, and your fourth expansion. And the fifth base, again, there are ways to harass. There's an attack path here, an attack path here, likewise here and here as well. So there are ways to try to punish this. And as opposed to on other maps, again, even though you can set up on the fifth base, I believe the area here is wide enough to be able to harass the base behind it. So we have seen maps where the fifth base is right next to the attack path and covers the attack path as well, and allows for an easy 6-base setup. That is less applicable here, is what I would say. But I just did touch on something as well about trying to take some of the more aggressive bases to punish your opponent. This is more applicable here than on Winter's Madness. If you remember, the fifth base on Winter's Madness was really safe and secure, and it allowed you to get your own 6th and 7th expansion pretty easily, which was a big con in my mind. Here, because this base is more exposed, the defending the turtling player here is going to be stuck on 4 bases, ideally, whereas the aggressing player can actually take this base for themselves. They can take the high yield gas geyser base and try to punish and apply pressure and make it difficult to take a 5th expansion here, which I would say is like a positive thing. I say difficult, not impossible. You can still take it, but you want to make them work for it. You don't want just like a free 5th base, a free 6th base, a free 7th base. That was the issue that I had with Winter's Madness. This is a better example of wider attack paths, of more angles of attack as well, of still having like a relatively secure initial base setup, but as you progress further in the map, like that's when some issues can take place, to the point where maybe even a Protoss player would just take this low ground expansion instead. For mostly standard maps, this one might be my favorite. Yeah, like there's definitely a lot of positive aspects of this. I'm shocked that Winter Madness made it through. So just catching up. Really like Old Republic. Maybe some areas can be opened up a little bit, but some minor edits is great. Some areas could be more. I think this is pretty open. Like, I think this is pretty open, especially considering that the map is going to open up even more, right? Like, you're going to be able to knock down these rocks, knock down these rocks, knock down these. Like as the rocks get knocked down, like this area does open up. You can definitely argue that maybe the center path here, like there's less options to engage, but the center path is on the low ground as well. When it comes to pushes up here, I don't know. I feel like it's quite fair with how open it is. There's always like a balance you want to have, right, as well. You don't want it to be too open. You don't want things to swing too heavily. But yeah, I was relatively satisfied with this compared to Winter's Madness is going to be the I'm going to rag on it so much now just because it made it into the top 16. Oh no. What was some of the other comments here? Let's have a look. Judge 2, 0 comments. Judge 4, 0 comments. Judge 5, 0 comments. Lovely. Judge 1, 5 out of... Jesus, gave it a 5. I don't know if I liked it that much. Nice layout with lovely aesthetics to match. The only issue with this map is that it only has 1 expansion pattern viable. I think I would agree with that. Sure. Low ground areas could be wider / more opened up. Low ground areas could be wider / more opened up. Maybe. You know what's crazy to me is that like they have this critique, but they still gave it a 5. Like it's for me that's crazy. Like again, like a lot of 5s were given out by some of these other judges. It's crazy. It's crazy. Oh my god. Jesus. All right, what was next? Ruby Rock. Look at Judge 4 common on Celestial. I saw that, yeah. If this is Celestial, then it seems that hell may be leaking again. What are we saying? Why are we memeing, Pappy? Why are we memeing in the Judge comments? What's going on? What a clown. Alright, Ruby Rock. Ruby Rock. This, I think, was a standard map, right? Am I crazy? Yeah. Standard. Here we... Oh, I remember this map. Sorry. Switch our scenes over for it. Here we have Ruby Rock. Okay, what do we say? Ruby Rock. This is another map which I rated quite highly. Again, I think my 4s were quite sparing. Okay. Expanding past 5 bases seems extremely difficult, so this map should force more drop-heavy and active play due to the difficulty of turtling. This also applies to Zerg. The bases being spread out will make it difficult for Roach base openers to keep up with drop play. I'm excited for this map. Let's go. Let us go. Let's see here. Again, when it comes to your natural base, you have your center natural, you have your 3rd and 4th base. Unlike on some of the other maps that we've seen so far, there is an entrance here. There is a ramp in between the 3rd natural and 4th base. This is similar to, say, on... I almost said Tokamak. On Tokamak, it's fully walled off, but here it is open, so it does make it more accessible to rotate back and forth between these 3 bases. Likewise, there's no debris here either. There are some maps where they would have this setup, but they would have, say, debris here, and they'd have this open, so you'd have to pull back a little bit further to rotate between these bases. But here, it is more accessible. It is more open, so the aggressing player can actually bounce back and forth between these bases with a little bit more ease. A little bit, as there's still rocks here, so this is where the 4th base is maybe a little bit more difficult to rotate towards. But spreading out here, you have your 4th base, which also is relatively straightforward to take. All these like linear bases, true, but again, the entrances are a little bit wider. There are more attack paths as well, and getting, I mean, we spoke about it, right? It's like the 5th base is going to be very difficult to take. Why? Because the center bases, the 5th and 6th base options, are contested bases, as you have to expand towards your opponent into the center of the map. So your 5 base setup, so your 4 base setup is relatively standard, with some ways to harass, of course, which I would say is a good thing. And if you want to take another base, then you have to fight for it, which again I would say is a good thing as well. So in general, like, this is what I'm looking for in a standard map, where you have like ways to try to punish on 4 bases at least somewhat, and then your 5th base is more difficult to take. This is what I was looking for the most part. When it comes to main attack paths and pushes, again, once the rocks get knocked down, there are ways to engage, there are ways to surround. Just like how there are multiple ways to try to be aggressive and push into some of these bases, these are also ways to move down onto the low ground to set up for surrounds, to flank, and to engage an aggressing army as well. I would say that it's going to be quite necessary to knock down these rocks ahead of time to open up the center of the map. Otherwise, tank pushes and bio pushes and pushes in general can be quite powerful, but once they get knocked down, like, the map is going to open up that much more, and this is going to be a little more accessible. Let's see what some of the other guys did comment. We had Judge 2. Locking the center might be a bit too restrictive. Other than that, I don't see major issues. True. As I mentioned before, like, the center does seem a little bit brutal, but like, if you can knock down those rocks, I think that is going to be enough to offset it. Only thing I'd potentially consider doing different is how the rocks are placed at the triangular 3rd. If you want it strictly to be on that ramp, then it should be on the other side of the ramp instead. Rocks at the 3rd. If they're on the other side, then it does make it more, I would say, more defendable. They're referring to the triangular 3rd base. I'd probably put the rocks on the high ground in between the ramp and the path next to the ramp that lead into the triangular 3rd base. For the players this way, it would create 2 choke points instead. For me, like, I wouldn't want it to be too turtley. Like, that's what they're advocating for here, is to make the bases easier to defend. Triangular 3rd is in a straight line attack path from the opponent's natural. Usually when this is the case, there are large diagonal rocks that force players to deviate from the straight path or time in clearing them. I guess so. I don't think I'd be opposed to that, to maybe moving the rocks. Yeah, I think I can get behind that change. Really good map. Okay, let's go. What was next? Andromeda. Oof. This, Yo, I was not very fond of this map. I said this before at the start of the stream. If you ever see a 2.5 from me, it was only 2.5 to be nice. Like it was gonna be a 2, and I was like, I'm giving out too many 2s, Mappy. I'll give it a 2.5 just to be nice, Mappy. Oh god, I can't believe Andromeda made it through. That's crazy. All right, let's have a look. Let's open it up. Hello, Nikachu. Hello. Oh, this no shot. I was having this is one of the maps where I brought on some pro players in a call to go over this because I had a really hard time like giving this any higher of a rating. Jesus. This is Andromeda? Okay, we'll get into it. Alright. What are my comments? Unique map design, very ambitious. As stated in the mapmaker's comments, all-ins look very strong on this map due to both the rush distance and also the terrain leading into the third base. I think what is crazy about this map is that the mapmaker admitted that this is going to be very strong for all-ins and pushes. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. It would be. The reason why this is like I'm being a little bit harsher on that fact is because the mapmaker said that they were hoping to incorporate some of the fringe bases and allow players to expand and get into a higher base count. I can't see that happening here, I'll be honest. But going further into our comments. Due to both rush distance and also the terrain leading into the third, the choke points and ramps leading into the main attack path make it difficult for defending players to engage. The center high yield gas expansion also seems surprisingly secure due to the tall grass, rocks, and high ground surrounding it. This allows the expansion to be a launch point for pushes in TVZ and lets the low ground 5th base be taken with relative ease. Because of this, I don't see many games leading into the late game. Removing the ice rocks in the center would help greatly, as it would remove the defensive strength of the high yield expansion while also allowing for better engagements and surrounds for Zerg players defending against aggression. Okay, let's get into it. So you have your initial 3-base setup, which is again relatively standard. There is a singular ramp here coming in towards the natural and the third. It's a little bit wider, a little bit of a more accessible ramp. That's true, at least compared to the ramp that we saw previously. That leads us here into, I would say, the problem issue here, which is crazy. We spoke earlier about some of the macro maps and some of the 5th bases that were a little bit too well placed to get a secure 6th expansion because of where they were placed. This is very similar, but instead of a 5th base, it's the 4th base. Here, the forward 4th expansion is on the high ground, and it is surrounded by rocks, by debris, by tall grass, by this high ground as well. I went through a couple of players just to make sure, but they were like, no, yeah, like, like say a Terran player in TVZ, they could very easily take this as a 4th and then just push, right? And then just push forward into the 3rd base. Or even before any of that, ARAXs would be very strong here. And in general, the reason why I bring up ARAXs is because ARAXs have been very common and very prevalent in the meta as of late. And I would push against the ease of ARAXs on certain maps. That's something that was definitely in the back of my mind when it comes to some of these maps. But pushing here from this base to your opponent's 3rd base is very direct, and again, because of the terrain, because of these rocks, because of these like alcoves of rocks, of like the permanent rocks, the tall grass, the ramps as well, a Terran player pushing through the center here, like, you cannot engage this. You can't. You just, what are you gonna do? You cannot surround, you cannot engage. It is very easy for a push to move right through the center. This is not just applicable to Terran players, of course, but to any kind of Protoss players as well. Pushing through the center very safely, setting up here. You even have rocks here outside of the 3rd base that you can set up as well. This also helps cover the ramp and cover the attempted surround location. Likewise here as well. And you can very easily push into the 3rd base. So the comments about the map maker talking about like, oh, the fringe bases and all that stuff, like it's not going to come into play. Like all-ins would be very strong. This isn't just applicable to Terran. On the opposite side of things, ZVP, Queen walks and Queen all-ins, German taxis across the map would be very prevalent here towards the third base. This third base is just a little more accessible in that respect. But speaking, so just all-ins in general here, whether it's from Terran, Zerg, Protoss, are going to be seen very prevalently here towards the third base, which in my mind is not what we're really looking for when it comes to a standard map like this, especially if the goal is to try to make use of some of these fringe bases. But more importantly, the other issue here is because of where this high yield base is placed. If a player decides not to go for an all-in, and if say a Terran player would decide to play macro instead, they can set up on 3 bases, take this forward third base, and because of all this terrain, because of the rocks, because of the tall grass, because of the cliff faces here as well, this is very secure. Not just that, it also allows them to protect this attack path towards the southern expansion and helps protect this base to set up on an easy 5 base setup. As again, armies are not going to be engaging here, they cannot, so the main army of the Terran player should be located around here to protect that that 6th expansion. Sorry, that 5th base? Yeah, sorry, to protect the 6th expansion. So setting up on 5 bases here is going to be very straightforward. It's going to be favored because of the terrain, because of the map design as well, just because how safe and secure this 4 and 5 base setup is, especially if you can just use the minimal units here to just wall this area up and wall this area off. And yeah, I was just again, like I brought on a bunch of players and they were all just very shocked as to how secure this center area is. I did provide some feedback as to how to try to rectify that. For me, I would just remove some of these rocks. I would ask the map maker to remove some of these rocks to open up this area a little bit more, to make it more accessible, and to potentially even move this base as well, or even make this base here more accessible and more open. True. So there will be more options to harass and more options to engage. But yeah, I'm shocked that this map made it through into the top 16. That's crazy. It's insane. Also, shout out to Miguelita, shout out to Vindicta, gaha, papi, gaha, Miguelito. Hope you had a great stream, hope you had a great ladder session. Welcome, welcome. Bienvenidos. Bienvenidos. Wasn't a big fan of it either, to be honest. I like the one DP1 map at Magnetic North. It was interesting. His other two, I don't know, not a big fan. DP1 or Depressed 1? Oh, is this the Depressed 1 map? I see, I see. This one reminds me of the bush map I submitted on Arcana, except this one is bonkers. Yeah, like I haven't gone through the other judges' comments here. Because the other judges, like, as I mentioned before, I was giving this a 2.5. Like, for those that are maybe just now tuning in, if you ever see a 2.5, it's just me not wanting to give too many 2s. Like I felt bad. I was like, I can see them like adjusting it and fixing it, so I'll give it a 2.5. That's yeah. And that might be enough to push it through. We got a 5 out of Judge 2. We got a 5 out of Judge 2, no comments. We got a 4.5 out of Judge 4, no comment. We got a 4 out of Judge 5, no comments. We got a 4.5 out of Judge 1. What did Judge 1 say? For Andromeda. Pretty cool layout with nice aesthetics. Only thing I dislike about this layout are the corner bases on low ground, which can only be attacked from the same path as the base that is meant to be taken before it. Defend that spot, you defend both of the bases. If you remember, this is one of the things that we were highlighting, is how easy it is to secure the 5th base when you take the forward 4th expansion. Defend the high ground base in front of them, you pretty much defend both bases behind it as well. Yes, so they Judge 1 acknowledges one of my critiques. Where was that reflected in the overall score? Mapmaker wanted it to be safer in the later stage of the game, but I still believe that the corner could have been executed a bit better than it currently is. What were the good parts? What? why did this get a 4.5? They're like, yeah, it's pretty easy to get up to 4 and 5 bases. Well, it isn't just that, it's the 4th base is also a high yield base as well, so it's even stronger. And they didn't even address just how good all-ins are on this map. They did so previously, right? Was it on Old Republic? No, it wasn't. It was on Ruby Rock, right? Here, triangular third is in a straight line attack path from the opponent's natural. Well, I mean, here, it's like a straight line here to the from third to third. Like, do we not care? do we not care? And again, like, it's all on the same point of elevation, so there's no high ground advantage. Again, like, the pushing here, like, you can easily secure these ramps, so trying to flank from these ramps, from any of these ramps, is going to be difficult as well. So yeah, I'm a little bit shocked that they brought this up on one of the other maps, where they didn't bring it up on this map. It's crazy. So yeah, this is there are only a couple of maps like this, but this is one of the maps that I'm shocked made it into the top 16. Like, that's crazy. It's crazy. That was crazy. All right, what was next? Thrones of Dunes. Throne of Dunes. Where are we at? Was this a macro map? Yeah, it was. Okay. So the next map that made it through the into the top 16 was Throne of Dunes. Oh wait, was this a Diablo map? No shot. This was the Diablo 2 map, right? Yeah, it was. God damn it. So, fun fact, this map, I was very tempted to give it 2. I was very tempted. I think it was this map, right? In the end, I gave it a 3. God, yeah, I remember this. Okay. So aesthetically, it looks nice, I will say. Aesthetically, it looks nice. Let's have a look at what our comments were. Have a look. Throne of Dunes. I gave it a 3 in the end, but again, I was very tempted to get a 4, to give it a 2. I remember I didn't give it a 2 because there were other more egregious maps, so I'm like, I settled on a 3 here. The 5 base expansion setup as Protoss and Terran is very secure. The high ground forward base serves as a way to easily secure a 5th base on the low ground. Okay, so let's get into it. So here we have our main base. We have our 3 base setup here. Now, it is a little bit more accessible. There are 2 ramps coming in towards the natural. One of them is quite narrow, but there is a second entrance here that does kind of offset that a little bit. So that, I would say, is probably a better thing, as we can set up on 3 bases. Now, my big concern in regards to this map, I remember we did a bunch of testing, we threw down a bunch of tanks, is this base on the high ground. So you can get your 1, 2, 3, and then you can get your 4th expansion here on the high ground. And we were checking a bunch of tank spots here, and these tanks on the high ground, and I guess you can set up a center tower as well. I'm pretty sure you can... Oh. Pretty sure you can unsiege and you can move a tank in manually as well. But these tanks, if you reposition them, they actually cover the entirety of this. I think there's one little slither. There's one little slither where a unit can actually fit and squeeze through. But if you remember, we're becoming like we're just like repeating ourselves at this point. But we spoke about something that I wasn't too fond of, was a setup like this, where you can take the forward high ground expansion, which does protect this attack path, which means that this base is for free, right? This is just a free base, right? This is just a free base that you can get as a 5th expansion. 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, your 5th base. And typically this is something that I dissuade just because I want to give players the option and the opportunity to be aggressive and to harass and to make a player fight for their 5 base setup, right? Especially for a 5th expansion, right? Like, if you remember, something that I was willing to be okay with for macro maps specifically was 4 bases, like an easy 4 base setup. It's a large map, it's a macro map, fine, you know, have your 4 base setup. Let's have a more exposed 5th base instead. But here, the 5th base is safe. The 5th base is secure. just because, like, how do you engage into this? You have to go through one of the other expansions or through here, which can be covered from the high ground as well. When it comes to main attack paths, the main army should be situated here at the 4th location, and this area will help protect the 4th base. It'll help protect the base or the area leading in towards the 3rd. And again, here you have the high ground, you have the choke points. You can maybe try to harass here a little bit, but I was concerned that this would just be too much of a turtle heavy map out there. Yeah, that was my concern. I think it is relatively open as you're pushing. I think there are ways to engage and harass. I think this is why in the end I did settle on a 3. I just settled on a 3, like the safe like 5 base setup maybe didn't constitute a 2, so in the end I settled on a 3 instead. Like there were worse maps. There were worse maps 100%. But this is like a concerning factor to me. Like personally, I don't think it's a healthy thing for the game. I don't think people enjoy playing it. I don't think people enjoy watching it as well. When you have a setup where you just decide to just hunker down on 5 bases, turtle up, max out, and then start engaging and start pushing. At least that's my opinion. There are others that maybe disagree, that maybe want that, or I should say there may be others that think that maybe it's nice to have an option of that a couple of times in a map pool, and have like 2 or 3 maps that actually cater towards that kind of style. But I feel like we should be pushing away from that sort of thing. At least that's like my personal opinion on how maps should like pan out and how that should progress. In my opinion. Oh. What did some of the other guys say? Yo, shout out to Avex. Shout out to Avex. Oh. This was for Throne of Dunes. So, Judge 4, no comments. Judge 5, no comments. Judge 2, no comment. Ah, don't you just love it? Ah, God, all the input. It's so good. God damn it. Here, Judge 1. Great layouts, great aesthetics. Only problem I'm seeing with this map is the high ground linear 4th base providing good tank spots to push into the 3rd. I don't think it's too oppressive as the ramp is pretty wide to climb. It's just something worth noting. The high ground linear 4th base providing good tank spots to push into the 3rd base. Push into towards the 3rd base. Yeah, that's something sure. I'm a little, once again, I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't bring up the safe 5th. This is now the 2nd time that this has happened, where here, right? Sorry. So Judge 1, they didn't actually bring up the fact that the forward base protects the 5th for Throne of Dunes, but for Andromeda, they did bring it up, right? Here, one thing I dislike about this layout of the corner bases, one thing I dislike about this layout are the corner bases on the low ground, which can only be attacked from the same path as the base which is meant to be taken before it. Defend the spot and you defend both of the bases. Defend the high ground base in front of them and you pretty much defend those 2 bases behind it as well, right? So here they address this, right? Here Judge 1 addresses the fact that this high ground expansion is an issue because it allows for safer bases to be taken without like much contention there, without much opportunity for aggression. So they bring it up here for Andromeda. They still rated Andromeda highly, and they didn't bring it up for Throne of Dunes, even though it's there as well. So like, what's happening? So it's being like there are issues, at least in my opinion, with some of these maps that are brought up sometimes, but not brought up other times, which is kind of surprising. What do we have up next? Satellite Years. Up next we have Satellite Years. So yeah, this is one of the maps that I'm also surprised made it through. We had a 4.7 here, we had a 4.8. 4.8 is crazy, by the way. Like that's almost a perfect map. It's crazy. Take us to Satellite. 0 for 5 this one. I know. I'm not sure what your I don't know whose maps were whose coming into this. Smurge. I like to believe some of your maps. There were some maps that I thought were really good that didn't make it through. Like down here, there were some maps that I gave 4s that didn't quite make it through, unfortunately. Smurge, Mappy Smurge. Alright, satellite years. Let's go in. Let's go in, Mappy. You did not rate most of mine well. Oh no. Oh no. Not like this. Feels bad, man. Feels bad. Alright, let's head on over to satellite. I felt I think I said this for Cenotaph. Like I felt bad rating Cenotaph too low, but I also felt like I had to, because in my mind Cenotaph was the polar opposite of like of a turtle heavy map, right? Like maps where it's really easy, like the map that we just saw, like a map where it's really easy to secure yourself on 5 bases, I would like want to push against. But in my opinion, I feel like Cenotaph was too much in the other direction, like too much, too far, where I felt like it would be biased of me to rate it too highly, where like if I'm being harsh on really turtle heavy maps, I should be harsh on maps that are far too open as well. So Cenotaph was you know, he caught some strays as a result. Because I think I would say that it was the most open map out there. I think there was maybe one more above it, but yeah. Feel Cenotaph, man. Map that I would have enjoyed playing on. But I don't know, would have been healthy. So here we have we have satellite. Okay, what did we talk about when it comes to satellite? What did we bring up? It's all coming back to me. I remember having a really hard time with satellite. Let's see. Satellite. The linear 3rd and 4th bases being so close to each other will allow for a secure 4-base setup for turtle play. Thankfully, the 5th base options should be more difficult to take. Likewise, there's a high yield gas base to compensate if a player does decide to turtle. Overall, the map has a decent balance of defensive play and aggressive options. Judge 4, nothing. Judge 5, nothing. Judge 2, nothing. And then we had some comments out of Judge number 1. Getting into the map itself, this is a really unique feature that we touched on here, that I don't think we've seen in quite some time, but we have a 3rd base option and the 4th base right next to each other. So again, this is like a relatively easy 4-base setup. I say relatively easy, as opposed to some of the other maps that we've been showcasing here. The area in between the natural and the 3rd base is open, and it's on the low ground as well. I think this is the first time we've seen this specifically on the maps that we've seen in the top 16, right? Out of all the top 16 maps, as we're progressively going a little bit lower and lower, I think this is the first time this has happened, and this will be a point of contention. This will be an area that can be abused, where a lot of aggression occurs and can make it a little bit more difficult to defend against aggressive play. The rush distance by ground is a little bit longer here, but again, this is something to bear in mind, is how difficult it could be to actually maintain your 3 bases, at least in between the 2nd and the 3rd base. The 4th, I guess to compensate, that's maybe why the 4th base is so easy to take. Like the 4th base is so straightforward. There are 2 entrances here. We have rocks to be knocked down, so you can try to open this up and allow for 2 wide ramps into the 4th base, and again this area here between the bases. And as I was emphasizing in my comments, the 5th base is much more difficult to take. Sure, you can get up to 4 bases. Remember, this is a macro map, I believe, right? Yeah. This is a quote-unquote macro map, so this is meant to be like leading into longer games. So you have your 4 bases relatively secure, except for maybe again this area in between the bases, but the 5th base you got to fight for. Here it's on the low ground, here on the low ground as well, so 2 low ground options which are going to be more exposed. You have high ground right next to it. You can potentially knock down these rocks to open up the low ground even more. You can maybe try to expand more forward here towards your opponent's base. That would be crazy. I think there's a tower here, right? Yeah, here there's rocks to knock down and open up the Zelnaga tower as well. So I think this is one of the reasons why I did rate this a little bit higher, is just like how much more open the 5th base is specifically, but how relatively easy it is to get up to 4 bases. And I also did touch on the high yield bases as well. True. Well, the high yield bases are a little bit more exposed, but they can be taken if an opponent does decide to turtle up on 4 bases, right? If a player does decide to turtle up and secure themselves on 4 bases and slowly try to get a 5th base, then ideally the aggressing player will be taking the high yield gas themselves, will have that advantage to be able to punish the player who's trying to just be very defensive. At least that was my thought process coming into it. That's a cute tower. Yeah, it's an interesting tower over here. True. Where are the balloons? Where are the moopies? I didn't see them. Yo, there was one map that that had like a bunch of moopies like tied up. I was like, what? They were like all in. It was like a prison for moopies. I was like, what's happening here? Poor moopies. Ah. Behind the main, I think linear 3rd base. Oh. Ah. Oh, there's like a little Zeppelin. Yeah, look at him. Look at him go. They're setting. Oh, this is like a cinematic. Look at that. Poor guys. They're trying to like one small step for Moopy. One giant leap for Ewoks around the multiverse. They're taking to the stars. They're like, we're gonna go travel the universe, but they're in a hot. They're gonna die horribly because they're in a hot. This is their version of a spaceship. The lore, Pappy, the lore. This is where the technology has taken them. We'll drift off into space on on a hot air balloon. Spoiler: he's not gonna make it. He's a brave soul, a very brave. He's not gonna make it, Pappy. He's not gonna make it. The technology isn't there yet. Oh no. The balloon is made of biodomes. Let's go. Let's go. They're gonna try to spread out to other planets. Yeah, there's another one here. Beautiful. Beautiful. Alright, what were the other comments on this map? This was Satellite Years. Considering that players are expanding on this map progressively towards the center, I believe that linear 3rd base should be reiterated. Linear 3rd bases should have horizontal mineral lines instead of diagonal, since they are more exposed with the way they currently are. Okay. Also, the linear 3rd base should have a better choke entrance as well. This could be fixed easily by placing rocks next to the overlord pillar in front of the base. Oh, they want rocks here? They want to... So they want to secure the 3rd base. Basically, they just want to... They want a more secure 3rd, is what they're looking for. I'd move the ice rocks to the linear 4th base as both ramps lead into the same choke point, and holding that choke point protects the linear 3rd base as well. Other than that, I quite like this layout and aesthetics as well. Referring to removing these rocks. Interesting. Am I against the idea of securing the 3rd base even more? I don't think so, just because, again, this map is meant to be more of a macro map. Would it be concerning if it's too safe to take a 3rd base to get into a 4 base setup? Nah, I think I can get behind, especially because of the low ground setup here. Like I don't think I'd eject against it. I don't think. I don't know if it's necessary though. They meant on the. Oh, you mean out here on the choke point? Well, it says here, the linear 3rd should have a better choke point entrance as well. Yeah, it's the comment says entrance, so I'm assuming that's here, right? The other entrance. Oh, you mean this? I see, I see. Rocks here to secure this though. No, yeah, okay, I can get behind that. Sure. To close off the area in between the bases a little bit to nullify the strength of all-ins coming from this side, from this angle. The wire coming out of the Vespine ends makes you wonder if it was more closed off before, right there. Because of this. It's like, what? True. Where are we going? What are we connecting to, Pappy? What's going on? True. Interesting. It does make it look like there should be something there. You're not wrong. It's like, where are we pumping the gas to? What's happening? Where's the gas going? Ah. Yeah. Interesting. But sure, I can get behind that. Closing this area off a little bit more. For sure. Again, this is also why I would love to I'd love to see some comments, because we got a 4.5 from Judge 1 for this map. We got a 5 from Judge 2, like a perfect score. Crazy. Would be nice to know why that was. We got a 4 from me. We got a 2.25 from Judge 4. I think this is the lowest rating we've seen from Judge 4. We're going to see from Judge 4 specifically for the top maps. But he really didn't like Satellites. And then we had 4.4 from Judge 5. But also no comments. Like, again, like, it would be nice to hear some reasoning, some rationale as to their thought process. I think hearing from more opinions and from more perspectives is always a good thing. Just so you know what to take into account, just so you know what not to take into account. There are some things that some people catch, there are other things that other people catch instead. Just 5. I mean, most of them is no comment. Judge 4 is the same. Judge 2 a little bit, at least. A little bit. Like, Pat, you can't be like, you can't ignore, you can't be like, oh, Judge 4, he's fine. And then what was the comment? Remember, the comment for Celestial Enclave? It's like, yeah, this is the comments we need. True. If only Judge 5 was this in depth with his thoughts. If only he was this eloquent with his words. True. I was like, white rat. Yo, white rat. Okay. So I was talking earlier about Andromeda. How it was crazy that Andromeda made it through, and Andromeda should not be making it out into the main map pool. Like, that's insane. White Rabbit. I can't believe White Rabbit made it through the Vita. Like, I was close to giving it a 1. Unironically, I was so close to giving this a 1 out of 5. White Rabbit? No shot. Oh god, let's get into it. White Rabbit was the Matrix map. That's why it's called White Rabbit. Where is it? It's in the standard? Yeah, standard. Oh god. I can't believe, Pappy. Okay. Jesus. This is another one of these maps where I brought pro players into a call because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't crazy. I was like, this map is like unplayable, right? And they're like, no, yeah. So I was like, okay. It was like a sanity check kind of moment. All right. What did we say? White Rabbit. The layers of elevation are used quite heavily here. Due to the terrain and base layout, it looks very difficult to break a Tourmalene player on 5 bases. With the choke, and remember, this is not meant to be a macro map, this was under the standard category. With the choke point, ramps, and elevated locations all throughout the center, 8 racks and tank-based pushes will be extremely difficult to defend against, as there are not many surround opportunities. I would suggest removing the ravine in the center of the map to assist with that, as well as removing the rocks at the center expansions, as that deters aggressive army movement to threaten expansions. Okay, so getting into White Rabbits, we have our main base, we have our third base. We do have a ramp in between the natural, the third, and the fourth base. That is true, so there is going to be another angle of attack here. Moving into these bases, though, it is very choky. There's a lot of ramps, a lot of choke points here towards the triangular third base, towards the linear third base as well. Something that we found really interesting and that I did touch on is these rocks do dissuade from rotating between the bases. You do have to go back and forth. Not just that, but these rocks can also be used offensively when it comes to pushing forward into your bases as well as an aggressing player. The ravine that I mentioned was this area here. This is a rare sight. I want to say we rarely see this specific kind of layout here, which is, you can, I mean, I say that, I guess you kind of have it on, oh god, Incorporeal. It's a little bit on Incorporeal, where you can fire from one half of the map to the other. You can, Mappy, what is happening here? What is going on? Like, there is so many tank spots on this map, just because of the terrain, just because of all these ravines, just because of all the choke points here, where you can shut down a lot of these different paths, a lot of the center of the map specifically. I'm a little bit surprised that there's no ramp here, right? There's no ramp. There's nothing. This is nothing in the middle. You just get some free shots off. It's crazy. When it comes to, again, your bases, again, just very choky, very defensive. Because of how the terrain is set up, it does mean that a player can push through the center of the map with relative ease, with it being quite difficult to actually try to surround or try to engage, just because there's so many attack paths that are closed off, especially if these rocks are not knocked down as well. Yeah, I'm a little bit in awe, not gonna lie. True. Categories don't really exist. Even if I thought of this as a macro map, like, I should emphasize it. Like, it's still crazy. I don't Blink would be terrible. Yeah, exactly. When I say that, like, there's just a lot of terrain here that can be used in quite an aggressive manner, which doesn't really allow for much counterplay, which this is typically dissuaded, I feel like, when it comes to maps. Especially here when it comes to the center. So defending against 8 racks, defending against tank pushes as well, is going to be very difficult. I was talking about these tank positionings here as well, pushing into the bases, pushing in between the bases. Like, there's just a lot of areas like this where you can very easily set up and very easily move into. Jesus. Like, so yeah, I was very tempted to give it a 1, but I was like, there's like worse maps out there. So I did like pull back on that. But yeah, I'm a little bit surprised that this was rated as highly, just because it is so turtle heavy. So again, on this map, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, even here, 6. Yeah, I feel like on 6 bases you can secure yourself quite easily on. So you can turtle up on 6 bases and max out. Obviously, you'd be doing that even before 6 bases. I wish they got Ageddon there to judge. Oh, maybe. I don't know Ageddon personally. If this would be a good macro map but submitted as standard, it's fine. Yeah. Like, I should also think of this as a macro map, but I don't think my opinions would change if I thought of this as a macro map as well. Like, I think the criticisms would still stand. Just because, if you recall, before I was saying that, like, getting up to 4 bases on a macro map is fine, but, like, you want to be, like, ideally making them fight for their 5th base and fight for their 6th base. Like, I would hope so, personally. What were the other comments? I like how what my team initial on maps like Hardwire and Royal Blood is solved by giving players an option to open up the low ground that otherwise would create a long path that is hard to flank. I think that's in regards to the rocks outside of the third base. Great layout. This is one of the best forward base executions. This map resembles a Kairos Junction quite a bit in essence with opening setup. I think this is in regards to, we spoke earlier, we were criticizing the placement of center maps expanding and defending other expansions. That is true. That is not the case here, where the forward base doesn't protect another expansion. But I would say that the other bases are a little bit more secure to take anyway. See, usually 4 bases deny paths. Yep. They're addressing one of the, which is weird that Judge 1 didn't bring it up earlier, because we're once again addressing like the issue of defending bases with forward expansions. We're addressing it here as well, but not in other places. Usually 4 bases, 9 paths, and force awkward middle of awkward middle of the map, but this one was pretty well made. With that said, I still don't think that the forward base will be really taken until a later stage of the game, but it is nice that it isn't denying a potential path that should be there. That is true. That is true. Again, it's something that was brought up here, but not brought up in other places. It would be nice to hear from some of the other judges as to their thought process. Are the CranKy Ducklings tournaments going to be using TLMC maps? Yes. We will be getting around to that for sure. We did it for the last TLMC, but we do want to like provide as much testing as possible, as much feedback as possible. So we're probably going to be hosting all of our tournaments on the new maps. I'm sure a lot of the other online tournaments will follow suit. I'm pretty sure they would follow suit. Up next, Risen Memory. Oh, this was another one of, I had a really hard time like formulating an opinion on Risen Memory. Like I was stuck on this map for a couple of days where I was just putting it off. Sorry, I'm just trying to look for it. Risen Memory. I think it's under standard. Okay. Oh, I remember. I had a really hard time with this map because it's so open. I recall like it's like, and I felt like, once again, as I was mentioning before, I was rating quite harshly maps where it favored defensive play too much, where if it's too easy to get up to 5, 6, 7 bases, like I was typically pushing against that. But this was another one of the more extreme maps, right, where you have your natural, you have your third, but your fourth base, like look at this, look at the area between your third and the fourth. It is so open, obviously, especially when the rocks get knocked down. Same with this base as well here on the left hand side. When these rocks get knocked down, like it is so accessible. And I was like, oh god, this is like the other end, right, the other extreme end, where I'm trying to push against 2 turtle heavy bases and 2 turtle heavy maps, and this is like just attack from everywhere. It's crazy. I would say that the 3 base setup is okay. It's okay, as your army most likely will be situated here outside of the natural on the high ground, or you can leave some units on the high ground and your army can be rotating here instead. But it's the 4th base which is like more of a concern. Risen Memory, I wasn't sure. Yeah, like, I had a really hard time like placing my final rating on Risen Memory. Like I didn't know what. I think in the end I gave it a 3, right? I think I gave it a 3. The way the natural to third base kind of works, you mean because of the high ground here? Yeah, true. Like, that's what I mean, right? Like, you can set up on the high ground to help protect your third base, to force the longer attack path towards the third. So, like, again, like, your 3-base setup is pretty secure here, for the most part. Compare the forward linear third base to the one on Winter Madness. Yo, we don't need to talk about Winter Madness anymore. Ah, God. Ah, no. Ah. Use the rain in front of the natural. Yeah, for sure. Alright, what did we say on this map? Recent memory. The 4th base onwards are very spread out and open. 8 ranks of tank pushes look quite strong pushing through the center. However, with the new proposed changes, this may be less of an issue. I remember, yeah, this was one of my... I bring up the proposed changes because this is one of the last maps that I kind of settled on as well. And I wasn't too sure if we should even take that into consideration. In the end, we didn't, when it comes to the new proposed changes. But yeah, the center of the map is very choked up. Once again, we have terrain here in the center, kind of dissuading from surrounds. That's true, it's going to be difficult to engage in the center of the map, but you make up for it with how open it is here, pushing into the 3rd, pushing into the 4th base, pushing into the 5th base, so whichever happens to be taken. There are, especially once you knock down the rocks, which is going to have to be a requirement, of course, you can like engage, you can surround, you can deal with that. Of course, more difficult in the center, but you might just give up on trying to engage in the center for sure. But yeah, I had a really hard time, judging whether or not this was too much, whether we had gone too far in certain places. You know, I had a really hard time like landing on that. In the end, I just gave it a 3. I gave it an average scoreline. What did the other guys say? All right, Judge 5, nothing. Judge 4, nothing. Judge 2. The forward base has a stone pile that makes it awkward to move around for the defender. An interesting layout. Forward base makes it awkward to move around. Oh, referring to this pillar here. If they take the forward 3rd base option. Doesn't make it awkward to move around. I feel like you want this, right? To create a choke point. You could argue that maybe this should be a little bit further forward. I think it's here just because it also helps against this, depending on the angle of attack. So I guess I get what they're saying. No, yeah, this is more to dissuade and to help against pushes coming from here. Less so here. Okay. What else was said? I love the opening layouts of this map, but I'm not a big fan of those rocks that help with the wall off. Tanks in at the natural CC, Nexus penetrate from the low ground near the linear 3rd base. Wait, what? Am I turned around? Hold on. Where am I? Tanks can hit the natural from the 3rd? What? Am I crazy? Am I missing something? Near the linear 3rd. Nexus. Oh! No, yeah. Here. And not here. So from the mineral line. From the mineral line can reach the Nexus. Okay. I guess we would have to try to probably push this forward to dissuade that. Good catch. Bases are a bit further apart and more open than usual, but it isn't inherently a bad thing. Cliffs might be problematic with chasing air flying units between bases with ground units. Okay, there wasn't really too much added to it. Okay. Okay, fair enough. That is easy fix. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Like little things like this, like you shouldn't penalize too much because you just move like things over, right? Like it's fine. It's fine. Missing you today. Oh boy. I remember we had fun with this one because it sounds like a K-pop song. Let's go. I remember this one. Yeah. This is one of the maps that has potential, but we found had a lot of issues, unfortunately. All right. Well, at least in my opinion, of course. Let's get into it. I actually liked it at first glance. I liked it at first glance as well. Let's see. So what did we say? I appreciate the use of elevation. Oh, sorry. I'll start the music again. I appreciate the use of elevation with the corner bases being as different as they are. Unfortunately, it is far too easy to establish yourself on 4 and even 5 bases. The defensive army rotations are too straightforward and the entrances into the bases are too narrow. It might be best for the entrance to the low ground 4th base to not have a ramp and to utilize 3 levels of elevation instead. I also don't think it is necessary for the rocks to be protecting the northern 5th expansion. In its current state, it favors turtle play far too much. I'm referring to this. I'm referring to the main, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and main, natural, 3rd, 4th, and 5th bases. Specifically, I was referring to this 5-base setup. It is very, very kind of, do I say standard? Like it's just really, we see this a lot. It's just tucked away in a corner. You have your easy 5-base setup. You can very easily rotate back and forth between this. Like there's no, like it's just a very straightforward kind of rotating pattern as the defending player to secure yourself on these 5 bases. And the problem with that is that if you have a really safe and secure 5-base setup like this, then the more interesting parts of the map don't really matter. Referring to this like low ground, like you have like all this like terrain and rocks and you have all these bases. On the high ground you have like some gold expansions as well. Like this is all really cool and really interesting. So at a first glance I was like, oh, like it's a really interesting setup here with the gold bases, with the low ground, with how different the high and the low ground is, with the different points of elevation. But something that we, at least our conclusion was here as I brought some players on to discuss this, was that these central features don't really matter if you can just set up on 5 bases in your corner of the map anyway. Like if you can just take this, then it's you're not going to be engaging in any of this. You can just turtle up, you can max out, get into mech, get into sky toss, so just build up your death ball of an army and then start pushing, and it just takes away from all of the more interesting aspects of the map. Which is why I recommended getting rid of, I think one of my recommendations was getting rid of this tower to make this base more accessible. The fact that there's a destructible tower here to fully wall this area off, and for this to be like a more thin like attack path as well, like I don't know if there's much need for this 5th base to be as defendable as it is. Likewise here as well, like because of the ramp, because of the high ground, like because of the thinner entrance here as well, like it's just, in my mind at least, it's very easy to just turtle up on 5 bases. And it just takes away from everything else, unfortunately. That was at least the feedback that I had given. Obviously, like, amendments can be made, changes can be made, but yeah, I typically push away from this kind of layout, which is like your corner 5 bases. Because you're good. You're good on this. That's all you need. That's all you need, Mappy. Typically, if you remember, when it comes to trying to punish this, or a way to try to counterbalance this, is to give the aggressing player some more valuable bases. So like, I don't know, imagine if this base here was a gas base, right? If this was a high yield gas expansion, for example, if the northern bases were high yield gases. I say high yield gas because gold minerals, it's not as useful, it's not as impactful in my opinion. I mean, obviously it is more so for other races, say for like TVP, for example. Like the boosted minerals helps a lot when it comes to reinforcing with zealots and being able to apply a lot of pressure with charge or heavy compositions. That is true, so this will be benefiting Protoss players quite a lot more. I would say that this will in general this will favor Protoss players a lot more in PvT, because you have your Terran player that's going to be turtling up on their 3 and then eventually 4 bases, and they can turtle up quite nicely here. But because a Protoss has access to this, that does mean that they can, or they have more resources to work with to be a little bit more inefficient, to just throw wave after wave of charges to break these positions and break these siege lines at the 3rd and 4th. That is true. This is going to benefit, say, a Protoss in this position if the Terran player is turtling, but in Zerg matchups, the minerals matter a little bit less. This is where gas is much more important, and there are no high-yield gas geysers here. Maybe I should have specified that a little bit more when it comes to my comments, when it comes to my judge comments on missing you today, to have something to try to stop the turtle up on 5 bases, right? The corner is a whole season of mining for Terran. Well, this corner is a whole season for mining for Protoss as well. Like for anyone really. Like it's less for Zerg. Like it's more on Zerg to like take more bases and take more expansions. But like there's no need to traverse out onto the map and to expose yourself when you have like as secure of a 5 base setup as this. Which is why I rated this map quite poorly because of that. There are ways to fix this for sure. But in my opinion, like I feel like a lot would have to be done to open up some of the bases and to provide some more like beneficial bases for a player that is trying to be aggressive. Very tight choke at the triangle. Yeah. I like making those narrow if it's a flat ground, maybe too narrow. I'd say the tower can go. Yeah, I feel like the tower is a bit much, in my opinion. The tower here at the 5th base. Could have one base be gold minerals and one base purple. Top right. Sure. Whether you want to make like one gold, one purple, or have gold on one side and gas on the other, right? Like however you would want to do it. Like that would be like my recommendation. To try to push back against like someone that is being more defensive. Can't judge based on what it could be rather than what it is. I respect that. Yeah, it's hard because like the problem is that if you there's the other extreme, right, where if you believe that technically any map can be worked on, right? Like technically, right? Like with that thought process, like is there ever really like a 1 or a 2? Because like you can have a list of recommendations and try to like adjust and morph the map and try to like address certain things. But yeah, regardless, what were some of the other comments made? But that's why I didn't give it like a straight up 2 or anything lower. Judge 5, no comments. Judge 4, no comments. Judge 2 had a comment for this one. A very creative usage of ramps divided by low ground pillars. 2 gold bases seem a bit extreme. Maybe the gold base in the middle could be replaced with a Zelnaga tower akin to Cosmic Sapphire. That was Judge 2's comments. Interesting regarding the maybe too many gold bases. 2 gold bases next to each other. I can see that being an issue. As I mentioned before, like I can see that mainly being utilized by Protoss players when they get map control. That's at least typically what the meta is at the moment, is that the Terran player is going to be stuck at home on like a 3 and 4 base setup, and the Protoss gains map control. They take the gold bases. Giving them 2 gold bases might be a little bit too excessive. I can see that. I can see that argument for sure. Judge 1. This map really has a unique way of using extremely large ramps. Aesthetics are pretty neat too. In regards to gameplay, I only have a complaint about bottom left corner of the map. The linear fourths are in such a close proximity to one another and in a straight line path. This is pretty bad for a diagonal mirror symmetry. I think they're referring to the rush distance from fourth to fourth here. They're referring to the shorter rush distance here between these two bases. There are rocks in between, which can be knocked down, but we're talking about, I mean, this is potentially a third base, right? Potentially like a third base, and then you turn this into an 8 racks, I suppose. So they're concerned about this rush distance. I want to say that there are flanking options and there are flanking opportunities here for sure when it comes to trying to engage into a push that's coming in. I don't think it's much of an issue, personally, but that is a concern that was raised regarding this rush distance. I feel like you'll be fine. to be honest, I feel like you'll be fine on 5 aces here, but sure. The bottom quadrant with the lowest cliff level could really be reworked into something better. That's a little bit vague. Bottom quadrant reworked into something better. I mean, my big criticism about the lowest quadrant is that we're not going to be seeing much action here, in my opinion. Because there's no, for me, like, there's no incentive to take these bases, really. Like, except for the player that has map control, of course. But because of these gold bases here, like, this is what you want, right? Like, if you have map control, you're gonna be taking the northern bases, not the southern bases, I would imagine. Especially because you have the high ground advantage here as well, right? So if your opponent's trying to apply pressure to punish the space, you have the high ground. At least against this expansion. You even have the high ground ramp here as well. So punishing this base is going to be hard. I'm thinking about TVP specifically. If we were going to take that route. Alright, what was next? Taito Citadel. Okay. We're halfway through. We'll get there. Taito. And obviously these are just my opinions. Which is also why I would like to hear more opinions from the other judges, but it's fine. It's fine. Is it in standard? Am I blind? Taito Citadel. Oh, there it is. Okay. Where are we at? Alright, so I gave this a 3. Okay, the 4-base setup is very secure. However, unlike Tokamak, unlike Tokamak, the destructible rocks outside of the natural are more accessible to the aggressing player. This will allow for more army rotations and potential to threaten more bases. The Zonaga will also alert for early move-outs and timings. We had no comment from Judge 4, no comment from Judge 5, no comment from Judge 2. Judge number 1. Pretty solid and lovely map. Only potential problematic things are almost straight attack line between opposing players' linear third bases, middle of the map has a small narrow path, and the rest is just a hole gameplay wise. Tanks can hit the natural middle line from the linear third, low ground, easy fix. So just don't really have anything negative to say about the map. Coming into this, as we mentioned, like the 4-base setup here is pretty stock standard. As I mentioned, there is this entrance here in between the bases, which can be opened up. On Tokamak, it is difficult as the aggressing player to knock down these rocks and to actually start to apply pressure and rotate, just because the rocks are so much more defended on Tokamak. Here, less so. So this does allow for more rotations. We have some wide ramps. Likewise, you can knock down these rocks as well. So the 4-base setup here is more accessible, which in my opinion is a good thing, just so you can apply pressure, so it isn't just an easy 4-base setup. Personally, I do want to push away from that. I don't really like the idea of being able to get up to 4 and 5 bases too easily. Yeah, I want them to work for it, but I want to work for it. And here, like, there's, I would say, a decent balance, especially because early on we have the rocks. In a later game, that's when they typically get knocked down. The 5th base here is going to be much more difficult to take. You have the low ground 5th base option, which is more exposed, and you have the 5th base on the right hand side, where you spread yourself out a little bit more thinly. Here the bases are more spread out, and here there are multiple entrances in towards that 5th base. So overall, I was actually quite fond of this map. Quite fond of it. One of the criticisms that Judge 1 had was the rush distance from 3rd to 3rd, which is pretty straightforward. True, I mean, there are points of elevation. This is also why I brought up the Zelnaga tower. This tower will spot move outs from 3rd base to 3rd base. At least from the high ground, I should say, and through the center as well. So the Zelnaga is going to be really important when it comes to moving, or when it comes to spotting that. I thought it was a Moopy for a moment. So yeah, I don't really have too much to add to that either. It's pretty straightforward. We have the goal base on the left, so we have standard base on the right. But in general, we'll be incentivizing more aggressive play overall. And not too much either, like not too heavily. This is not as open as, say, what was the other map? As Risen Memory, true. It's not as open. Nowhere near. I maybe could have given this a 4. Up next, Mothership. TLMC 21, no comment. The Moopy's in the bushes by the triangular third and behind the mains. Oh! Let's have a look. Oh, oh, wait, whoa, what's happening here? What? Oh, no. Moopies, what are you doing? Ah. They're sacrificing. I believe he's on the spike. Look. He's impaled. Ah, look away. Look away. The Moopies. They're having a blood sacrifice in the corner of the map. Ah, no. What's happening over here? They're just chilling. See, this is fine. I say this is fine. Are they eating like a marine? That's a marine. That's a leg. That's the gun. That's the helmet. Ah. They killed a marine. Let's go. God. The Moopies, they're vicious, Pappy. They're vicious. They're crazy. See the chat. What in the world? This is the sick and demented mind of map makers. This is what they hide in your maps. Oh no. The hidden messages. You didn't even know it while you're playing your game. Jesus. They're crazy. Alright, where are we dropping next? Mothership. Oh, I remember this one. This one, I think this was one of the dynamic maps, right? Yeah. Mothership made it through. Crazy. Was this a 3-player spawn map? It was. Okay, okay. 3. Jesus. Oh god. That's a lot of text. But 3-player spawn map, I think I rated this higher than the other one. There were like 2 3-player spawn maps, right? Did any of the 4-player maps make it in? I hope so. All right, Mothership. What were our comments? I gave it a 3. Interesting map. The third base is close enough to the natural to be able to defend against all-ins in one location for ZVP. However, there is one abusable position which I don't think was intentional. Outside of the natural base on the low ground, tanks and siege and set up within range of 3 mineral patches and a gas geyser. On top of that, the path leading to the tanks is quite long, and punishing this position is insanely strong for for tank-based all-ins. I would hope to see some crates/objects placed to limit that. I remember. I'm referring to this. Yeah, this is there is a brutal spot here where you're within range of the mineral line. You're within range of these 3 patches, these 3 mineral patches and the gas geyser. And I was referring specifically to the fact that to be able to engage into this, you have to go around, which is all abusable by the tanks if they have vision, so they can shoot this entire area going all the way around and even down here as well. It's very long. It's a very long path to these tanks. So as you try to engage, say if you're a Protoss player with charge shots, or Protoss player with stalkers, I should say, with Stalker Sentry, or a Zerg player even as well, like trying to engage and collapse onto this position, you will be taking a lot of tank shots to the face, even dealing with this. So as I said in the comment, I don't think this is intentional. Like, all you have to do is just move the terrain. Just move the terrain over, add some objects, and you can fix this. But that is something that was apparent when it comes to that. When it comes to defending against all-ins, as I mentioned, this is a really secure 3-base setup here. You have rocks here, you have a choke point here in between the third and the natural, and you have a ramp coming into the third base. Getting your base here, I was gonna say it looks pretty easy to set up on 4 bases. I just didn't realize that apparently this light bridge is traversable. I didn't realize at the time. I was a little bit later, I was like, oh my god. I just thought that this was, you know, part of the map, but no, like, you can, units can be placed on the light bridge. So the 4th base is actually more open than I initially thought. So it is more open. So more of an open 4th base. You can, of course, instead take the forward expansion. I will say that this does have a bit of an issue when it comes to setting up on the high ground at this northern 4th to protect the low ground expansion. That is true. To offset that, there are attack paths and attack angles here towards the left-hand side to try to, again, punish some of these other bases. But that is also something to be concerned by, is that you can completely cover this area here outside of your linear 3rd base, for sure. That is also a concern. Potentially, like if you can't like necessarily harass on the left hand side. Let's see what the other guy said. Okay, so from Judge 5, no comment. Judge 4, no comment. Judge 2, no comment. Judge number 1. Great 3-player map layout and aesthetics. I love that the triangular 3rd base is viable regardless of opponent's spawn. Mothership has a few issues. 1, tank spots from linear 3rd base and siege natural, but yeah, that we brought up that position before. The air blockers weren't used properly. Battlecruiser Contactor will jump outside the bounds of air blockers. Okay, that was another quote-unquote bug. This also might mess up shift clicks around the map. Would be cool to have some doodads to indicate map bounds for air units of the map. Okay, so this is just mainly just like the little like critiques of again, some of the other features of the map. Nothing major here said. This was given a 5? Jesus. Judge 1 gave the Mothership a 5 out of 5. What the hell? It's crazy. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look too bad. I think it does look a little bit better compared to Last Fantasy. I do think this was one of the better of the 3-player spawn maps that were provided. There were a couple of them. Did any of the 4-player spam? I hope they did. I think I gave one of the 4-player spawn maps a 4, right? Should I have given it a 5? Like, there was one that I really liked. What's next? 10,000 feet. I think we already went through this one. 10,000 feet. I appreciate that you gave lots of feedback, Judge 3. Thank you. I appreciate that you appreciate it. I wish some of the other judges did provide some feedback as well. That's... I said it before, I guess, with more people tuning in. I'll be honest, it felt really disheartening when this morning when I woke up, when I saw that that the finalists were confirmed. I opened up the spreadsheet and then I got to see for the first time what the other judges had placed, and I saw how little they gave for feedback. I was like, guys, I'm like, what are we doing here? What's going on? What's happening? What's happening? Like, yeah, I mean, I said at the beginning of the stream how I do think it's really important to give rationale as to why you're giving something a high score. It'd be really nice to know, why did Judge 4 give this a 2.25? Why did Judge 4 give this a 5? Why did Judge 2 give this a 5? Like, it would be nice to know the rationale as to how they arrived to such conclusions, and maybe even some feedback as to how to improve a map, or what they're looking for, what they're not looking for. I understand that it's a lot of work, but I also feel like it's important. So yeah, it was a little bit disheartening, a little bit disappointing. Okay, 10,000 feet. — 10,000. Was this a rush map? Yes. 10,000 feet. Okay. Oh yeah, we already went through this. This was like a good example. I think this was the highest rated rush map. Sorry. We went through this earlier when we were going through like what I'm looking for in like a macro map or a rush map, and this was like a good example of what we would want. I think this was the highest placing rush map, where has a short rush distance by ground, but actually has a relatively secure 3-base setup. So you have your main base, your natural, your third base as well, where there's only one attack path here, which can be helped covered. And your rotations can be quite fast between your natural and third base. It's quite close. You can mine through these patches, but it can be opened up over time. Over time, these rocks will expire. These rocks will expire. These rocks will expire. So as you get into the mid game, the map opens up that much more, and you can be more aggressive. You can be more assertive. As the game progresses, I should say, and not too early on is what I will say as well, where early on it's a little bit more defendable. So yeah, this was like a good example of what we were looking for, and I think this was at least my highest placing for a rush map. Let's see. Yeah. This was the highest placing rush map. I think we all had good things to say about it. Let's see. The bases are very spread out. However, the Zerg debris should allow for a more secure early game, interesting use of the feature, opening up the map over time. That was my comment. Judge 5, no comments. Judge 4, no comments. Judge 2, it's hard to design around backward forward bases. The map does a pretty good job at that, as you are not forced to take it early on. And Judge 1, I love the layout from its opening with double entrance to the natural to the way it expands towards the sides. However, I find some problems. These Zerg rocks almost completely serve no purpose. Map could be completely playable without them. It is just creating a gimmick on the map, while it could be a perfectly normal map otherwise. I would disagree with that, actually. The Zerg rocks serve no purpose. I feel like, especially at the third base, they do, right? Like the fact that you are able to open up another attack path into a third, like, that's pretty important. What? what are we talking about? What? Okay. Yeah. So I feel like you can make an argument for these rocks, sure, right? Like, these are off to the side. Do these serve a purpose? I would say no, right? These tumors, they don't really. These, I would say, do. When it comes to these center debris, 100%. What does this do? This makes it easier. So if these center tumors don't get knocked down, if we are, say, a Terran player in a TVZ, and if we go for an 8-Rax, if we go for an 8-Rax, or if we go for our standard 7-minute push, I mean, I just said it, it's a 7-minute push. When do these debris, when do they expire? When do these tumors expire? Just under 8 minutes. Just under 8 minutes is when they expire. So pushes and attacks hit before this. They hit when these are still up and running. So ahead of time, you do have to clear these up if you want to open up the map. Otherwise, if they don't get cleared up, if they don't get opened, then they can be utilized when it comes to these early pushes and early timings. So this is going to impact the early to mid game for sure. So I would disagree with the statement that they don't really serve a purpose, except for like these fringe ones. Sure, like there are definitely like these fringe tumors, they don't really serve a purpose. I would agree with that, but the center ones and the ones at the third base, they do, for sure. That's kind of a weird comment. What else? The forward base in front of the natural, I'm not a big fan of. These kinds of setups always create a weird middle of the map, where there is only one path through the center and there's no good flanking options. This could have been a path for an attack, flanks, or rotations. Oddly enough, this map has a nice middle where players can use that middle ground to rotate between left or right sides of the map. However, rocks kill this option completely. Well, I mean, that's why you knock them down. Wait, what? This map's only problem is lack of flanks or rotation from one side or the other, because of the forward base not being a path, and these rocks just further exacerbate that issue. Well, no, like, I mean, that's the purpose of them. Is, like, the purpose of these tumors is that they do benefit these pushes, they do strengthen these pushes, which is something that has to be dealt with ahead of time, and you have to find the room and find the time to actually deal with said rocks. Yeah, okay, interesting. If tournament admins add more 3+ player maps, I hope they keep Last Fantasy in the pool. Justice for fear and faith. Oh no. Now you understand our struggle for 20-something TLMCs. I have heard that finding good judges are an issue. I would hope that we're able to find some though. I would hope that like, I have some people in my mind. Obviously, the hard thing is convincing them to be judges and convincing them to take part. But there are definitely some people that I would want to approach about stepping into that role. Again, it is a lot of work, especially for other people out there. Like, for me, I want to reach out to the other language casters, like Enki and Cosmos. They were the first two that came up in my mind. Because they cast obviously they don't cast as much as us, of course, but they cast a lot as well, and they, I'm sure, have their own insights as to what they find valuable. There is maybe an issue when it comes to maybe incorporating too many casters, because obviously they prioritize entertainment more so than other features and other factors. But I would hope that they are aware of that, and they approach this with a critical mind, despite, you know, wanting and looking for like more entertaining games. Like, I'm sure they have their own thoughts and their own critiques as well that they can add to something like this. Everyone has their own biases in some way, shape, or form. So I was thinking of some of the other language casters. I was thinking of some of the Koreans as well, specifically someone like Shin, where there's a language barrier issue, but if we can have a translator help out, then I think there's some value there as well. I don't think we have to limit ourselves to only the English-speaking scene and the English-speaking community. I don't think that's required to judge or to critique a map. He offers to judge, they put him on a possible judge list. Sure, maybe. I mean, I don't know Akedon personally, so I don't know if he'd be a good judge. Maybe he would be, maybe he wouldn't be. But yeah, I was thinking of some of the other language casters. I was thinking some people from the Korean scene or from the Korean community as well. Yeah, I think there's definitely some other viable options of people that can go into this a little bit more in depth. I know that's like I would love to like reach out to like Mark and Euthermal as well, For him, I know that Euthermal, I know that Pig, they were quite busy recently, obviously with what's been happening IRL, with Pig, with what's been happening with Pig, and likewise, like Euthermal is traveling a lot, but I wouldn't be opposed to even having them step in some way. Like, I think that they'd also be willing to critique a little bit more and have some insight as well. But again, it's a little work. But I think the reason why I bring up like someone like Pig and someone like Euthermal is that because they're content creators, they're willing to do something that I'm doing right now, right? Which is make content out of it, and I think that's useful. Like, as in, like, that's another reason as to why they would decide to invest as much time as possible to like properly go over all these maps and like formulate their own opinions. Anyway. So we already went through these comments. Up next, Tourmalene. We all rated it quite highly. Okay. Show us what you got. Never mind, it crashed. We'll get there, we'll get there. Damn. Okay. Oh. So here we have Tourmalene making it into the top 16. What do we have here? The base layout is really interesting. The map itself is relatively open, allowing for multiple ways to engage an army in a longer and later game. The terrain isn't too defensive. My biggest concern is that the main attack path is incredibly direct without many ways to use terrain to help slow down all-ins. However, the longer rush distance may be enough to deter this style of play. When it comes to Tourmalene, I don't think there's anything too exciting about it. As we mentioned, like, there is a very wide area here in between the natural, in between the third. So this area here is going to be much more accessible, especially because there's no ramp, there's no choke point. It's very open here in between the bases. Likewise here as well. And likewise towards the linear fourth base. This forward base, once again, doesn't really protect any expansion, so this is another good example of what we're looking for. And what I don't want to see is, like, if this forward base helps protect, if, say, for example, typically I'd expect to see this base is actually hugging here instead and covering this pathway. Like, that's what I would expect to see. That's what we see all the time. You know, you have the base on the left hand side instead, it covers this pathway and it protects this base, and then bam, you have your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 base set up here, already set up and already secure. That's kind of what we've seen quite a lot of already, but this takes a different approach. Instead, we have this expansion that doesn't cover any of the attack paths, which does make these bases more accessible here to aggression, to harassment. My concern was this attack path, which was very direct, but as I mentioned, we have a wide ramp here, ramp here, ramp here, the entrance here. Like, it does look like there aren't that many strong tank positions to set up behind it to commit to any kind of crazy all-in. So this, at least in my opinion, is a pretty solid map, is what I'm looking for in a quote-unquote standard map here to fill things out. This is a little bit more extreme in the sense that defending on 4 bases on this map is going to be more difficult than on some of the other maps that we've seen, but it isn't like hyper aggressive, I want to say. Let's see. Let's have a look at what we said. What some of the other guys said. All right, Judge 5, no comment. Judge 4, like it a lot, but it's pretty open. It is. Judge 2, a third base's choke point is a bit too wide. It might also be good to introduce some vision blockers to make hiding a bit more difficult on straight diagonal paths. Judge 1, pretty great map. I noticed a few potential issues with the layout. Linear thirds from opposing players are in short proximity from one another, allowing for a straight attack path. If you remember, that's something that we brought up as well. That was like the main, like, direct attack path from one side to the other. The high ground area that extends towards the bottom bottom right corner of the map will be critical here as it holds access to the corner base. It also ensures safety of all your expansions behind that attack path, while also pressuring the opponent's later expansion at the same time. Not that many great attack flank paths, considering many bases hide behind the high ground. Players expand pretty hard into each other as the game progresses, not necessarily a bad thing. Yeah, I would say that's a good thing. Yeah. Expand into each other, Pappy. But yeah, this did make it through. So we had Tourmalene. We had Magnetic North. This I was a little bit less hype on. What was Magnetic North? I will say that the map does look a little bit less exciting than some of the other maps, for sure. Where's Magnetic North? Was it a macro map? Wait, was it one of the 4-player spawn maps? No shot. No, it's not there. No. Am I blind? Oh, there it is. Jesus. Rush map. Oh, it's this. Oh, we already went through this. Wait, did we? No, we didn't. I confused it with Andromeda. Oh, some of the things were saved on this map. You can see here I was looking at like tank spots and tank positions here. I think I was checking to see if tanks get within range of the Nexus here. See, I was like trying to see some things. Oh. Un momento. BRB. we're back. So I do apologize. Did just have to quickly address something, but it's all good. It's all good. We can go back to our maps. Sorry, just catching up with the chat. Just catching up. Fear and Faith was a full player map. It just fell short. No. Barely fell short. Hold on, let's see. Where was Fear and Faith? We're almost done going through all the top 16 maps. Yeah, look at this. Fear and Faith was 3.8 as opposed to 3.86. like the margins between these maps were so close, so very close. Like, it's insane. Like, it's crazy just how close some of this was. Aye. All right, Magnetic North. Go through our thoughts. We gave it a 3. Maybe I'm missing something, but it seems like a very basic 4-player besides the worker pods. Of course, design gets constrained when you have more spawns. Are you referring, right, is Fear and Faith the one with the monorails? Is that the monorail map? Should have seen last TLMC. Way closer. Crazy. Alright. What did it say? Magnetic North. Interesting design with 3rd and 4th bases opening up over the course of the game with shuttled rocks. The center of the map is very congested, which will make it difficult to engage armies. To offset this, Zerg players will need to destroy the rocks ahead of time at pre-7 minutes or just open Roach in ZVT. Let's have a look. Magnetic North. We have a first, we have a second. Wait, was I reading the right one? Yes, we have our natural, we have our main, we have a natural, we have our 3rd base. Low ground 3rd expansion. This isn't seen too often. So we have a low ground 3rd base, which, as we did mention, can open up even further with these rocks if they do get knocked down. Likewise, same can be said here at the 4th base, which also has rocks, which also is much more accessible. We even have like potentially a backward base. A backward expansion here towards the right hand side, another path here as well towards that 4th base, so it is a little more open, or has potential to be more open in the longer and later game. Less so in the earlier game, but still, we have high ground here that can maybe be made use of. The reason why I was setting up all these tanks previously is because of how, as we mentioned, how congested the center of the map is, will make it very difficult to actually engage. I would imagine that we have to wait for the army to actually push forward to actually set up surrounds or set up engagements over towards the 3rd and 4th bases instead. But yeah, this center is really congested. I think in my feedback, I think I mentioned how like these rocks need to be cleared up ahead of time. Otherwise, it'll be so difficult to deal with pushes like this, moving towards the 3rd and moving towards the 4th base. Oh. What were some of the other comments? There's no real need to have so many Ridge-Festing Gas Geyser bases. How many are there? We have, I mean, this isn't really... I don't know if I would take this base too seriously. We have a gas geyser on the right. Oh, okay, we have 2 next to each other. Ah, that's interesting. 2 high yield gases right next to each other. I think this one is fine just because it's going to be so awkward and so difficult to take. But yeah, sure, I can understand that criticism here. Sure. So a great layout. I personally am not a fan of half bases on spots where a player would expect a normal expansion, but the idea is definitely worth experimenting. Initial openings are similar and well balanced. Linear 3rd base should have those ice rocks placed on the other side of that path. Linear 3rd base, other side. I think they're referring to these rocks being here instead. That would just make this more defendable. Sure. Tanks can siege both natural bases, both natural gases from the low ground. That's an easy fix. This map probably could have easily scored very high as a normal. Right, we already pointed that out here with these tanks. Layout is quite solid, familiar, but still unique. Okay. Interesting that they didn't really talk about how open it is. Any of the other judges. Interesting. I ended up giving this a 3. 3 out of 5. Alright, Winter... we don't have to go through Winter Madness. I still can't believe Winter Madness made it through. Oh, God. No. Jesus. Like, it's, yeah. So Winter Madness made it through, and then we had Talisman. So Winter Madness and Talisman towards the end. But, so once again, just to reiterate what I mentioned at the start of the stream, I do have some regrets. This was my first time judging, of course. This was my first time judging. And I don't know if you noticed, if I didn't make it clear earlier, hold on, I'll clear this up a little bit. That is the top 16, as we had Magnetic North into Winter Madness. There. Into Winter Madness, into Talisman as well. Winter Madness we already went through previously, and Talisman is a map that we've already seen in previous tournaments as well. Is more of a rush map. I do know that patches did say that he did change it a little bit at least, but it's a map that we're a little bit more familiar with. I don't think I rated it too highly. I gave it a 3. Actually, I'm curious as to what the others wrote for it. When it comes to Talisman, my thoughts were, I don't know why this map is in standard. We have seen this map in TLMCs in the past. All-ins are quite powerful as you push towards your opponent while expanding with the hybrid base. The wide ramp leading to the triangular hybrid base is quite crucial when attempting to hinder and slow down pushes. It's a fun map, but it feels quite limited in how you can play. I would agree with that. I feel like there are certain ways that it's a little bit less viable to expand through and to try to build up. I stand by my comments. Meanwhile, we had Judge 4 didn't say anything, Judge 5 didn't say anything, Judge 2. Placing rich Vespene bases on the scouting path makes taking them easier to scout for an earlier Ravager rush. Good amount of dead airspace, forcing players to expand in line instead might not be ideal in matchups. Meanwhile, we had Judge number 1. This map has a pretty cool concept with double entrances into the main base. Forage for normal mineral bases will be problematic, but it also is the essence of the map. I'm not entirely sure how everything will play out between the races, but I do have a feeling Terran will get the most benefits from this unique setup due to Reaper/Hellion blocking the opponent from mining too soon from it, and they can build a CC safely to fly it over. It's possible that Judge 1 maybe didn't watch the games. Talisman was featured quite a lot at the beginning of the year, just because it was one of the options for TLMC 20, and a lot of tournaments were showcasing these maps in the lead up to the final judging process, of course, until the final map pool. And most likely we're going to be seeing that again as well, where we're going to be featuring a lot of these maps in tournaments. This is something that I was really proud of, is that as a community, the last TLMC and the last PTR got the most testing in the history of StarCraft, because so many online tournaments now are run by the community. We no longer have ESL Open Cups, right? ESL Open Cups would never run their weekly tournaments on the PTR or on a mod featuring the PTR changes. That would never happen. But currently, because all these open cups are in control of the community, so ourselves, Wardy, alongside Stegosaurus, which is Pigstar Cup, alongside TKL with the Monday Night Weeklies, because we have more control, we all together agreed to just push the new map pool, the TLMC maps, onto all of those tournaments, into all those weekly cups, alongside the PTR as well. So again, the last PTR and the last TLMC got the most testing done out of any previous PTR or TLMC in the past, instead of just relying on Wardy's TLMC map tournaments, right? We had so much more testing, which was really cool, and we should be seeing that here as well, right? We should be seeing that again coming into this season. We have yet to do it ourselves. I mean, this just went live, but we will also be adopting a lot of these maps as well into our tournaments. So looking forward to doing that again. I do think it will create interesting openings between the races. Workers can't be put in the natural due to Reaper depths. Cool. Interesting. So yeah, it's possible that Judge 1 just wasn't around or wasn't watching a lot of tournaments at the start of the year. This TLMC had a 12 maps with 3.2 of top 16. That's crazy. Was 20 for TLMC 20. No shot. That's insane. It was accidentally. Oh, maybe. What did I rate for Fear and Faith? Fear and Faith. I think I gave it a 3. Yeah, I gave it a 3. I appreciate the use of worker-only pass to help the problem of not being able to scout your opponent in time with in the early game. My only concern is lack of Reaper cliffs. Yeah, that was one of my only concerns for Fear and Faith was the difficulty of scouting for Terran with Reaper cliffs. But that can just be added, right? I think that was my only big criticism on Fear and Faith. Oh god. There's definitely a learning curve for sure. Like I can't imagine making maps. Like it's like using the editor. Like it's daunting, man. It's daunting. This? Ah. Like with all the menus and everything, like there's definitely a lot to take in, and there's a lot of like things that are like quote unquote standard, like when it comes to like the sizes of bases, the distance between bases as well, the placement of ramps, the placement of Reaper cliffs. There's like there's a lot to consider. There's like a lot of different things to take into consideration when making a map. So not easy. So much love to all the map makers out there, to Timmy in the chat, to Patches, to Avex as well. I know there were a couple of others that were dropping by. So yeah, much love to all the work that gets put into them. I know that like obviously it can be sometimes hard when it comes to like hearing critique, or the judging process, of course, as well, because this is at the end of the day like something that you put a lot of work and time and effort into, a lot of thought into as well, for sure. Sorry, I was gonna say something earlier, right? This is my first time judging. So definitely there were some things that I wished I did a little bit different. As I mentioned before, I'm gonna walk back on something. I think initially I reached out to Patches. I was like, oh, maybe I was too harsh. Looking back on it, nah, I could have been harsher. 100%. Yo, for Andromeda to make it through, for Winter Madness to make it through, no shot. We gotta. I still can't believe it. I should not have given this a 2.5. I should have just gone with my gut and given it a 2, Pappy. Ay. How did this happen? But I do wish that I gave out more 5s. I didn't give out a single 5 because, at least from the guidelines that we were given, like a 5 is like a perfect map. And I felt like every map like had something that could be worked on. So I didn't think a 5 existed. But I said this at the start of the stream, given how freely some of these other guys were giving out 5s, like it's crazy. Like there were there were so many 5s given by the other judges. It's like insane. It's like, Pappy, is everything perfect? Like what's going on? So like if the other judges are doing this, if the other judges are like giving out 5s, like it doesn't matter, then I should be more willing to do something similar and give out like a 5 here and there for sure. So I didn't. I was, so maybe, yeah. So obviously we have our own opinions, we have our own criteria with how we judge things. But like it's insane. just how just some of the numbers that were given out here. It's crazy. Like, it's just a wall of green. So I think Patches recommended that that like once I'm done with filtering out some of these maps, once I'm settled with my scores, like to find like a top 3, like even if they're not like, even if they have issues, even if they have something that can be worked on, just find like a top 3 and just give them 5s. Just give them, and I'm like, yeah, I can get behind, I understand that, like I can get behind that. Like I think that's a good idea, especially with how close the margins are, right? Like if some of these down here that were like off by like 0.3 or like 0.03 and 0.02 and 0.05 and 0.06, if one of these got 1 extra point, and some of these I'm pretty sure, like down here, like here I gave out some 4s like this, potentially some of these 4s could have been 5s, and that could have been enough to push them through and to actually give them like a better chance, better ranking, actually allow them to be a part of the main map pool as well. So yeah, there's like some really good maps down here, at least that I thought were quite good, and potentially like they could have had a better chance at actually making it through if I had maybe given out some 5s. Now obviously there's a world where maybe the 5s that I give out are these up here anyway, like maybe like this 4, maybe I would have given these 5 and that wouldn't have changed anything. True, maybe it wouldn't have, right? Maybe it wouldn't have, or maybe it would have, right? Like it's I can't say for certain, but like if the other guys are a little bit more laissez-faire with their 5s, then I should be less restrictive with them as well, I feel. Otherwise I'm just hurting like other maps, right? Like I don't think I would have changed any of the ones. I think maybe some of the 2s I would have given a I think one of the things I would have done is maybe I would have given White Rabbit a 1 instead of a 2. Like I can't believe White Rabbit made it through. I can't believe it, man. I can't believe it. So maybe I should have been a little bit more strict in some places, maybe less strict in others. But yeah, in the end, GG. GG. I think before the next TLMC, I'm probably gonna try to look for other judges to add to this. Whether the judges stay on, it's fine. Like as I mentioned before, I don't want to speak too poorly on the people the other judges that are covering this event. But I do think obviously more judges is better, right? To have just a wider array of opinions, of critique, of just angles of just looking at some of these maps and different perspectives, of course, as well. So I'm probably gonna maybe try to help out with that sort of thing and find some people to recommend at least to wax. Obviously, I cannot like, you know, can push them in or anything like that, but I can at least, you know, give some recommendations of who might be a good fit and who might not be a good fit, just so we can get more judges in here. Likewise, I personally do really hope that maybe we can enforce comments. Obviously it is a lot of work, and I'm not saying that you have to write a lot, but it would be nice to hear some of the rationale behind why someone gave a low score, why someone gave a high score. Maybe even like, hey, if you give like below a 3 or if you give above a 4, like that requires a comment. Like that, it would be nice if it was maybe something like that at least. Just because I think it's just beneficial for everyone involved. Like obviously it's worse for whoever's judging because it's forcing them to put in more work into the judging process. True, that's maybe a bad thing, or that's maybe one of the roadblockers or one of the hindrances that's stopping people from judging these maps. True, but at the same time, like it did not feel good opening this up for the first time, checking and just seeing just nothing. It's like, god damn it, guys. Aye. Would it be interesting to look back at scores after the Warty tournaments? I wonder if you'd feel the same way about every map after their use in tournaments. True. It's possible that, I mean, obviously opinions will change. Like I will say this, I advise everyone when it comes to voting, it can be a little bit risky just because you don't want to forget to vote, but I do recommend holding off on voting until you get to see the most amount of games played on these maps. So there's going to be the Warty event, but there's going to be much more than that. A lot of the Open Cups are going to be hosting and showcasing these maps. It might even be better than the Warty event as well, just because you might just see more. I mean, you're just going to see more games. You're just going to see more games. So there's going to be a lot of content out there. We're going to be hosting tournaments on these maps. Stegosaurus, Picosaur Cups are probably going to be on these maps. Monday Night Weekly is going to be on these maps. I'll be pushing for KSL to be on these maps as well. So look forward to seeing a lot of tournaments on the new map pool, not just the Warty TLMC map. There's more than that, bear that in mind. So I do recommend checking out other events as well, and taking in as much of that as you can before you make your final decision, before you finalize your votes, because you might see something that you like, you might see something that you don't like. So I do recommend it. Obviously it can be risky, because if you're going to be delaying your voting, then it's easier to forget to vote. So you have to be careful. So you do have to be careful about that for sure. You don't want to wait too long to vote, but you know, your vote does matter. Your vote does count. We have our top 16. You've already seen some of my opinions when it comes to what maps are going to be, what maps I think are really good, what maps I don't think are really good, what will be healthy for the game, what I think won't be healthy for the game. You've kind of already heard my opinion, or at least my rationale in regards to that sort of thing. So yeah, we'll see how those tournaments do kind of unfold. I don't think White Rabbit will feel like a 1 after you see enough games on it. I mean, maybe. I don't know. I don't have much faith. I don't have faith in White Rabbit, but maybe it's okay. Maybe it's okay. Maybe it's fine. True. Maybe the other judges will realize it's like, oh no, what have we done? Meant that the purpose of testing them in tournaments is to point out things that judges got wrong, for better or for worse. Yeah, sure, kind of. Didn't realize. Or it's more like, yeah, how things play out, right? Do they play out the way that we assume they would? Do they not? On top of that, it's good to compare and contrast, right? Like, for example, there are some maps here that are relatively similar, that try to achieve the same thing, and there might not be enough room for that kind of map for multiple of them to be in the same map pool, right? So you have to kind of pick one over the other, and seeing the maps in action can help you kind of discern between the top maps, right? You know, like out of like these 3 or 4 macro based maps, which one did I enjoy the most? Which one would I rate above the others? Like, I don't know if I can make that distinction or delineation yet. After seeing those games, then I can, you know, have a better idea of what I liked more than others, right? The most funny comment I received on my map was a score of 1 with Cannon Rush Trash Map. No shot. Because my unbuildable plate was off by 1 tile. How could you, Patches? How could you be off by a tile? How dare you? 0 out of 5. Oh no. We all know that you can't move that tile. This was years ago. There you go. Yeah, and you know what though, Patches? You know what? I'm sure you've learned from that. I'm sure you've grown, and I'm sure you never misplace your plates, right? Never again, Mappy. Never again. But yeah. And so that was just at least my thought process going into the judging process of this map pool. Again, just to, I guess, reiterate, for the most part, I was pushing against some of the more turtle-heavy maps. I was pushing for some of the more open maps out there as well, just because personally I do think that's healthy for the game. I was more lenient when it came to maps that are larger, maps that are meant to be more macro-oriented. Of course, I would be like, okay, it's fine to be able to get a secure 4-base setup. Then I would look towards the 5th and 6th bases to be more open. That's typically what I was looking for, at least. I was looking for strengths of all-ins. I was looking to see Reaper cliffs, strength, or how vulnerable main bases are to blink play, to blink aggression. I would push against that, for example. Once again, if you want to check out more in depth, just because there are so many maps, and we're not going to go through everything, of course. We're wrapping up here with just the top 16, but if you want to look yourself, bam, it is available to you. It is available to the public. Link is in the Twitch chat. Link is in the YouTube chat as well. So you can have a look at all of the judging numbers, the score lines, and the comments that we all had as well. It's all publicly available, so you can look yourself. And you can also download the maps yourself. You can see here, download link. I mean, there's more stats. There's like rush distance from main to main, ramp to ramp, and comments from the map makers with what with what they believed would be useful information. Sometimes it was really lore heavy, so it was less useful, but sometimes it was really informative, sometimes less so. And of course there are download links as well, Google Drive links. There are Google Drive links, Dropbox links as well, so it's all there, it's all available for you to consume, for you to download, for you to check out yourself, to open up and to observe. And there's also imager links just for the minimap kind of look instead. Or not minimap, but top down. So it's all there, it's all available, you can have a look yourselves. And yeah, it was an interesting process. I might do this again. I had a really hard time just because I had so little time to judge, because we cast so much, right? Like we cast everything, so I had very, very little time. As I mentioned before, there were even instances where I was casting and then there would be like a break while videos were happening, and during that break I would quickly like open up the map maker and I'd start like typing down notes about some of the maps mid cast, mid tournament. So that's kind of what I was resorting to, just because we have so little time to go over this. But yeah, it's definitely something that I'll probably do. If Wax reaches out again, I'll do it again. I definitely will take a different approach. But once again, I would probably try to help when it comes to looking for more judges. If you're out there, if you know someone as well that you want to recommend, definitely reach out. I was saying earlier that I would love to get some of the other language commentators involved. People like Enki, people like Cosmos, some of the Koreans involved as well. I said it before, I'll say it again. I don't think you have to limit yourselves to English-speaking people or judges. Sure, like the English language can be a bit of a barrier for sure, but like if their English is good enough, like there are definitely people outside of just the English-speaking scene that do devote a lot of time to StarCraft, that have their own opinions, that can critique, of course, and that can add value to something like this as well. So I would hope that Wax and the TLMC are willing to reach out to some of the other language-speaking communities, whether it's Spanish, whether it's Brazilian, whether it's French, whether it's Italian, whether it's Polish. So I do think there's some value there for sure. I was thinking earlier of people like Euthermal, people like Pig, who I do think have a critical mind at times, or for the most part they have a critical mind, and they can also do well when it comes to judging. But I also said that for this TLMC they had less time, right? Like there's a lot going on in both of their lives at the moment, so they had less time to devote to this. And I know this is very time consuming as well, so it's understandable. But for the next one, like potentially we could get them involved, which would be really cool. They would also do stuff like this. They'd also make streams, they'd also make content, make videos about it, going over like what they were looking for and their thought process when it comes to these maps as well, where they're harsh, where they're not. So there's like other value for them to make content surrounding it, not just, devoting time to quote unquote nothing. So there's like other reasoning why they would get involved. You definitely don't need a limit to English. I was able to get a Korean judge for a community contest I did a while back. Even just a X out of 5 is valuable if translation is possible. For sure, 100%. So I do think there's, yeah, I hope that Wax is able to reach out to said people and find them for the next contest. Otherwise, with that, thanks for watching. With that, thanks for watching, thanks for tuning in. Again, so we have our top 16 maps. Some of them are actually really good. There's some that, at least you've seen my opinion, that I'm a little bit less excited for. I'm a little bit surprised that did make it through the judging process, but you know, maybe they'll be good maps once we see them actually played out in these tournaments. Maybe my decision or my speculation and even others would change as well, for the better, for the worse. But yeah, we'll see. Exciting times. Also, something that I should mention as well, that I mentioned before, is it is a big shame that the PTR was announced as we were doing the judging process. Obviously, we did not take into account the PTR, but it is a shame because we were judging these maps based on or at least I was, based on the current meta, based on current trends, and that will change in the new patch, because the new patch will be changing a lot of matchups, will be changing the meta in a big way most likely, and it's hard to account for that sort of thing. Obviously, we didn't try to. It's hard to, because on top of that, the PTR isn't final, right? The PTR changes are not final. There's going to be more changes being made, and it does put us in a bit of an awkward position when it comes to trying to construct a map pool while also not really knowing where the meta is going to settle either. So that's also another layer that was on top of that as well, which is a bit of a shame timing wise, at least. Bit of a shame timing wise. Judge 3 for FK. I appreciate it. I appreciate the kind words. I appreciate it. Again, much love to all the map makers out there. Especially if like I do recognize that I was a lot more strict with my point scoring than some of the other judges. So again, I hope that there's no hard feelings there either. And again, one for right now. Oh, why? No, you know what? You know what? Changes can be made. It'll be fine. Copium. But yeah, with that, thanks for watching. Thanks for the support. We do appreciate it. So we're going to be heading off for the time being. When it comes to the next stream is going to be later on tonight. It is going to be MSO, Master Swan Open. Let's have a look here at our schedule. Bam. There we go. We have our schedule here. Again, we have a bit of a leaner schedule. We did leave our mornings open. I got a lot of things to do. I got a lot of work to do. So we did leave our mornings open here. So right now we have a leaner broadcast schedule. We are still live every day, but no longer are we live twice a day every day. Now we're calming things down a little bit. This was a bit of a more impromptu stream, a more impromptu cast. Later on tonight, we're going to be featuring Master Swan Open, MSO. That's going to be later tonight. We have my assist of the game tomorrow. Exciting stuff. The big offline LAN event happening in Paris is of course tomorrow, and we have a replay cast of Pegasus Cup on Sunday. So plenty of content throughout the week. As always, again, we cast more StarCraft than anyone else out there. This is not a good representation of that, just because usually we're live twice a day every single day, with all the content, with all the casting. But starting this week and coming into the off season, we're trying to slow things down. It is nice to get some sleep. It's nice to touch some grass every now and then, go outside and not just non-stop cast StarCraft, which is what we've been doing for like 5 years. So fun fact, this is the leanest our schedule has ever looked in the past 5 years. So a little bit less casting, but still live every day. So we'll still be there, still content, still casting, still StarCraft. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys later on tonight for MSO, or we'll see you tomorrow for Maestros of the Game. Thanks for watching. Until next time, ciao, papi, ciao. Until next time, hasta luego.